Thank you for telling me that. I had to unmute the microphone. I'm dressed up for Easter. Yay! Let's go back to the wide shot. I decided I had to wear pink, and that in today's society as a cisgender heterosexual male, Easter is probably the only time where I can legitimately get away with this type of a getup, where I've got this beautiful orange silk scarf. I've got gold inlays on the jacket. And the jacket, as I said before, was something like $84. I got it in Hollywood, actually, when I was in Los Angeles, at a particular costume shop. And so sizzle jackets are in, you know, we got to make sure the collar's all lined up right because it keeps screwing up. But how are you guys doing? How's everybody feeling out there? Are you ready for the resurrection, Easter? All right. You mean transgender day? Somebody just said that. Well, I want to see what you guys are up to. You know, I get lonely out here alone in the mountains. You're looking fancy. Pink on men started in the 1950s. Beverly Lawrence, PhD, LAC. She's got the credentials to make that statement. David, you look very nice. Shaman, mermaid, black dragon. You are looking great, David. Hello from Oslo. I love your jacket. Happy Pink Easter. Aren't you cute? Hey, David, you look great. Gorgeous jacket for sure, and real men wear pink, says Gretchen. Oh my gosh, it's starting to get really fast now, you guys. You look good. Somebody still said no sound. Oh, okay. Thank you. That should fix it. Let's see. No, there should be sound now. We should be fine. Let me make sure these audio channels are muted properly. Yeah, we're good. So somebody else said Liberace's cousin. You look dapper. That was Tropocal said Liberace's cousin. It's salmon color, man. Happy Easter. Big hugs from Bosnia. Yelena Sklopna. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Oh, we just got a super chat here. Jacob Allman, thank you very much. Been following you since Ascension 2000. Wow, that's awesome. I have like a lot of slides. I didn't even actually have time to count them. Frank Hobson says, David is pretty. Thank you for being, you know, open about your feelings. That's very flattered. David is a multi-instrumentalist. Can you play some instruments? Well, this is the one that people want the most. If you do music, they're not necessarily excited about that. Here's one of the things when you're going out there as an artist into the internet, before we get into all of our other content, the way that I've learned how to deal with so many hecklers for so long, one of the ways I've learned to deal with it is that I just say to myself, okay, art is completely subjective. Some people said Andy Warhol had nothing to offer because he's taking Campbell's soup cans and he's just popping them out there into artwork, and it's ridiculous. It's pop art. He just popped it out. It doesn't mean anything. Well, now those Andy Warhol pieces are incredibly valuable. So art is completely subjective. There was a lot of people who didn't like Velvet Underground, the band that had some Andy Warhol art on it, on some of their covers, like the Banana. Okay, so when you are creating art, back in the time of Velvet Underground, we didn't have the internet, where Lou Reed would have just been mercilessly torn apart by so many trolls for the way his voice sounds and for some of the content that they have in some of their albums. Where they're singing about a dominatrix and the guy says, strike dear mistress, cure his heart. It's just really bizarre kind of stuff like that. And they're talking about severe drug abuse themes, you know, and it's being put out by the music industry, and it becomes like a cult hero for that. So art is very subjective. So when you go out there into the world and you're trying to make a name for yourself, you got to remember that some people are going to like your art and some people are not going to like your art. And the people who don't like your art are going to have a very authoritative opinion. And the way that they talk and the way that they insinuate is going to project in their writing as if it was very serious and very real. That doesn't change or diminish the value of the art to the people who do appreciate the art. And that's one of the things that is very difficult. We all have an inner child that wants to please everyone. This inner child wants to have everybody like me, and everybody's got to smile at me, and if anybody's frowning at me, then I get sad, you know. No, that's not how this works. If you want to go out there and be a public figure, you will be ridiculed, you will be shamed. And like I said, it's been happening ever since I got online and began posting in 1996. I was in Richard C. Hoagland's discussion forum. He was the top guy on Art Bell. That was the top show with 20 million listeners. So I went into his forum, and that's where I got my debut, because a lot of people were in there and they were all interested in these very enormously weird subjects that we were talking about. Things like, is there a face on Mars made out of some type of rock or material that's a gigantic face that actually was artificial and intended to look human with kind of a headdress around it? And I believe the answer is yes. Are there pyramids right next to that look just like pyramids in photos from NASA? Yes. There's whatever it was going over Mars. I think it was Viking. I'm not entirely sure, but it was 35A72 and 70A13 were the two frames. And I mean, I studied this stuff so much that it became just, oh yeah, 35A72, 70, just like quoting the Bible for somebody who's really, really into the Bible. I knew the numbers and I knew everything. I go into this forum, and there was a few people who, one of the most insidious trolls we had in that forum was James O'Berg. And he's still out there doing it now. It's so funny. People would just absolutely rip you apart. And then I would analyze these arguments online in great depth. And what I came to understand was that the trolls displayed something called intellectual dishonesty. And what this means is that they are not honest when you win a point in the argument. They simply shift their tactics to a different strategy. And so none of these argumentative trolls were actually disproving anything that Richard Hoagland had to say. All they were doing was trying to attack his character, to attack him as a person, and that's called an ad hominem, ADHOMINEM, ad hominem attack. And so, Richard would always say, challenge me on the data. Data is science. Science is free. Science is investigation. It's the spirit of learning new things, and it's the spirit of peer review, where others get to look at what you've had to come up with, and they can then draw their own conclusions based on your empirical data. You give them the roadmap on where they need to look, and then they can follow up. And so what I like to do ever since those days of the forum wars is say, yeah, I don't want to get too stuck in theoretical models. I don't want to get too stuck in what some insider says. Just making sure you guys can still hear me. Okay, you're all good. Your hair looks nice. Love the jacket too. Not sarcasm. Great to have you back. Best looking truther out there. Okay, well, I don't know how much competition I have, but thankfully there are truthers out there. There's some. It's very scary to come forward. I mean, that's just a very intrinsic reality. So anyway, let's read. Oh, Jenny M. sent me some money here, and she says, bless you, David, big love and more courage for all. From New Zealand. The trolls are the Earth's stupidest. Your fans are here right now. Please start your presentation. Well, this is the presentation. It's very important that we try to get you to go out there and do something and not just sit here and watch other people talk. I want you to get engaged in this. That's the hero's journey. The subject of today's talk is the hero's journey. Peaceable. Dressed to impress. He says, are you celebrating something? Thank you. So there we go. Yeah, we're talking about the hero's journey, and this is my most validating subject. So it is critically important to understand that history as we know it is not random, but it follows a structure of events that go through this thing called the hero's journey. Now, the hero's journey is a mythological structure, and we're going to go into more detail on that today. I was meditating on the last show. I haven't even had time to watch it, but in my meditation, I said, you know what? I really didn't go into enough deep depth about what the cycles really are and what the hero's journey is. And so I don't want you to feel lost, and I don't want you to feel like you have to buy my product to understand this either. I want to make it understandable to everybody. So events are structured in history according to this hero's journey pattern. And this also means that happy endings are guaranteed. Now, something I didn't even mention last time is that the hero's journey can also be called the Christ path. And this is appropriate for Easter because this is Good Friday, of course, is when Jesus dies on the cross. The weekend that we're in now represents the 3 days of time where he's supposedly dead in the tomb. And then on the third day is resurrection. That's Easter. And that's where there is a return, but in a body they didn't recognize his face. They didn't know who he was until he showed them his hands. And then they said, oh, well, yeah, there's holes in your hands from where you were crucified. This is the common biblical lore that's based on Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I think they all have different pieces of this part of the story in it. So it's interesting to note that the face was so dissimilar that when Mary first saw him, she thought he was somebody else who was working in the area. This is different than the resurrection of Lazarus, and that's one of the important things that when you get into esoteric Christianity, which is what I'm doing, he already brought Lazarus back from the dead. Okay, Jesus already did that. And so that was already on the list of miracles. Resurrection from the dead was already on the list of miracles that had already been done. If you could do it for somebody else, you should be able to do it for yourself. But Lazarus looked the same. Jesus did not look the same when he came out of the tomb, when they rolled away the stone. He had to show them his hands in order for them to understand that it was the same guy. Now, why is that so significant? It's significant because his face changed, the way his whole body looked changed, and he was glowing, apparently, which was, again, not what happened to Lazarus. So there is a difference between this concept of being born again, which I think has gotten really all brought out of whack. Being born again is, in many ideas of how you can reinterpret the Bible, that is the light body. Jesus was born again when he came back as this glowing person who they didn't even recognize who he was, and he has to show them, okay, yeah, look, here's crucifixion wounds. Oh, okay, so you're Jesus. Okay, got it. Boom, got it, buddy. You're Jesus. Okay, great. I never would have been able to figure that out, but now that you showed me your hands, it's cool, I got it. So then what I'm actually saying is, wait a minute. You said, let's go back to the slide, the hero's journey is the Christ path. And if you've been watching the previous shows, which hopefully you have been, I've said that the hero's journey represents this structure of events that happen to you in your own life. It's a structure of events. But the structure of events is designed by a higher intelligence, or God, or the Creator, if you want to call it that. It's a higher intelligence that designed the hero's journey. And this is a basic blueprint for how you learn spiritual lessons that you are here to learn. How do you learn your lessons? And if anybody thinks they don't need to learn any lessons, well, that's the whole reason we're here. You don't stop learning, and if you think that you do, you're just going to get hijacked with more karma. So the hero's journey is a soul blueprint for evolution. It's a sequence of events that happens to you because you are going to grow. You are going to perhaps learn a new skill, perhaps have more strength, perhaps have more courage, more bravery, perhaps become a more loving person, perhaps finish that project that you've got sitting in the garage and you always want to go in there and, I got to go get that done, man, and you just don't do it. Okay, any one of those ideas, if you just say, okay, you know what? I mean, somebody crashed into my car and I got to go out there with a hot sponge and wipe off the paint from their car to try to make the dent look a little better, you know? Just try to spruce it up a little bit, you know, because again, there's a 4-month wait list on getting any body work done on your car around here after this crazy snowstorm that we had. So nobody can get their car work done. It's just, so I'm like, okay, yeah, I can go out in the garage and I can go wipe that stuff off with a nice hot sponge and soapy water, you know. But that's a hero's journey. That's a quest. If I get that idea and I then decide to carry through with that plan, that is one example of the hero's journey. Okay? The hero's journey represents a moment in your life When you decide that you want something, I see Lauren's Deek again, thank you. That was right there, boom. Okay, so the hero's journey is this path that you're going through when you want something. You are the hero, always, so you are the star of your own play, and this is the same thing in dreams. Every character in your dream is somehow a projection or a reflection of yourself. So when you're going through the hero's journey, it starts by you having flaws, and this is also how they start a Hollywood screenplay. A Hollywood screenplay character is always good. A Hollywood screenplay is always based on a hero. There's always one main character. If you try to have two main characters, that's called a split main, and you probably won't sell very many movies. You have to have one character and everything revolves around that person. Otherwise, you have something called an episodic narrative, and that's what they typically do for television screenplays. And in a teleplay, you do need to have parallel main characters, more or less. So anyway, getting back to the point, the hero's journey starts with a wounded, flawed individual. And this is what the universe sees us as. We are flawed, we are damaged, we are growing through our wounds and our pain and our fear and our anxiety and our shame and our horror. And as we grow and as we learn more and as we evolve as beings, we become more compassionate. And so compassion is one of the things that the hero's journey produces. Strength is one of the things that the hero's journey produces. When you want something really badly, you have to become stronger in order to get it. If you want someone to love you, you have to become more loving in order to receive their love. You have to learn to write the little romantic notes and all that kind of stuff that guys are, I don't know, guys are supposed to do this stuff. They just put this stuff on paper. I don't know what the hell it is, man. It's just freaking crazy. Get out of here. From New York, what can I say? I've heard all these accents so many times growing up. It was so funny. And then I just realized that like the things that I learned are really funny to repeat. And the voices that I heard are really funny to repeat. So that's part of my hero's journey. I dealt with severe pain through laughter and comedy, and impersonations are one of the finest arts out of the Second City School that everybody was going to in Chicago that graduated the people who performed for Saturday Night Live, including Mike Myers, who did all the Austin Powers movies, which I guess are now outdated because of how horny they are. But I thought they were utterly hilarious, and the characters that he put in there and the way that he could play all these different characters was a very big inspiration for me. He's got Dr. Evil, he's got Fat Bastard. I was stunned by the quality of his impersonations, and it really had a big impression on me when I saw the second Austin Powers film in the theater in 1999. I mean, everybody in the entire theater was laughing so hard. It was one of the most ecstatic things ever to watch the first 20 minutes of that movie, which is all just one big crazy sizzle reel of crazy stuff. And then it finally starts to slow down. But watching that with this live audience in a movie theater was just incredible. And yeah, it's very outdated humor in a lot of ways because it's so crude. And it also has gross out humor. But, you know, that was a case where I just went to the movie and I'm like, I don't know about this thing. There's some guy and his head is bald and he's doing this and it looks really like, maybe it's funny, but it looks really freaking weird. And there's this guy with buck teeth and glasses and I don't know what the hell this thing is, but hell, I'm just going to go in there and check it out because I'm bored and what the hell. And I ended up having the greatest time. I had no idea it was going to be that good. The same thing happened with The Matrix, which came out the same year. I walked in there, like, I don't know, there's these people that are, you know, hanging their arms up in the air like this, and they're all doing this funny dance, and then they freeze in the air, and I don't know what the heck this thing is. It might be all right, might be cool. You know, Lawrence Fishburne looks awesome. They got their cool leather jackets. Okay, I'll check it out. What the hell? And then I watched the movie. I'm just like stunned at how good it was. And I think a lot of people were. The Matrix really was a revolutionary film for its time, and it brought in a lot of these interesting concepts that would be deemed philosophical. Philosophy getting into the concept of who am I, what is reality, why am I here, and what am I living in? And the Matrix, of course, gives us this other view that perhaps the world that we live in is some type of computer simulation. And so people philosophically geeked out on that extensively. And I was seeing that in Richard C. Hoagland's discussion forum. This concept of the Matrix was very interesting because, well, how do we know that there isn't something else? And then when you get into reincarnation, the really fascinating things about reincarnation I spoke about last time, I'm getting a lot of super chats here, so I'll just kind of switch to this camera. We can watch them go by. I want to stay on topic. I don't want to get lost. When we get down to this topic of reincarnation, as I was saying before, it's facial similarities. It's also apparently astrology matches, like we had in my case with Edgar Cayce. There's astonishing astrology matches. It's billions to one against chance. It's the best alignment with Cayce's planets in 157 years after his death that was calculated by independent astrologers. And I just had somebody recently send me an email, and they said that they've now calculated the death chart of Cayce with my birth chart, and there's some very, very astonishing and perfect lineups in those two charts as well. I didn't even know that until now. So getting back to the core point, this Christ path concept, how in the world could like David going and wiping off his car in the garage be compared to the story of Christ? Well, the story of Christ has the hero's journey in it. If you want to know what the hero's journey is, you got to look at the whole story of Christ. That's a very simple way to do it. Now, honestly, the main reason I don't usually talk about that is that people get so freaked out about religion and Christianity in particular. For some people, it's a trigger. They actually will get angry. They'll get defensive. They don't want to hear these words. They don't want to hear the word Christ or Jesus or anything like that. And I've really, in my career, tried to be very sensitive to that. I've tried to be, okay, I get it. You know, I'm not going to push anything on you, but we are right next to Easter, so this is the appropriate time to do it. And I'm not going to push anything. I'm just going to share philosophy. So The Matrix is one philosophy. As a movie, it says, okay, there's a big computer and we're all inside the computer living out our dream world, when in fact, we're really in these disgusting, gooey pods that we have this thing down our mouth and all these plugs in us and we're floating in this goo and we're just a battery for some type of evil machine. And then the machine controls us inside the Matrix through these agents. And you have Agent Smith, and he's this, one of the most brilliant forms of evil ever. And that gets to the next slide here, is the hero is only as good as the villain. Okay? So part of why The Matrix works so well as a film is that Agent Smith is such an incredible villain. Right at the beginning, when he wants Neo to stop talking, Neo's mouth just closes up into flesh. He can't use his mouth anymore. That's really freaking scary. Like, who the heck can do that? It's some type of black magic. Oh, well, these agents, they can control you in the Matrix. And it wasn't until the end of the Matrix where Neo is shot to death by Agent Smith, and then he resurrects, right? There's a resurrection there, and he comes up and he holds out his hand like this, and Agent Smith shoots at him. And all the bullets come down. And that moment was very powerful. Sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I don't know where that came from. So the hero is only as good as the villain. And in this case, you know, the villain Agent Smith is very, very powerful. So that moment where the hero is able to transcend death. Sorry. It wasn't just that one movie. It taps into this archetypal knowledge that we have as people. There's a knowingness inside ourselves that this transformation will occur. And it's not that, like in some heroes' journeys, if I go out and clean my car, the transformation is just that my car looks nicer. If the transformation is that you fall in love with someone, then that means that now you have a new person in your life. And, you know, you have the joy and the happiness, hopefully, that provides you. And that's what's supposed to happen, right? That's theoretically in terms of, the logic of relationship. That's what's theoretically supposed to happen. So the hero's only as good as the villain. There's a very important polar opposition between the hero and the villain. And so the villain has to be very, very bad to springboard the hero into that transformation that's bringing me to the point that I can't talk. That transformation is real. It's not just Agent Smith shooting Neo and him getting up from the dead and stopping the bullets, okay? This is a moment that happens in our lives when we override our selfishness, when we move beyond our stumbling blocks, when we engage our story, when we become embodiments of the hero. We decide that we will stand up against the villain in our lives. And so, as I said before, I wrote an entire book on this called The Synchronicity Key, and I realized after we wrote it and after we came up with this, first of all, my publisher said, okay, we got to make the cover of the book red in order to honor Carl Jung's book Synchronicity, because it was called The Red Book. When he came out with it, it was all red. So we said, yeah, we got to make it a red book cover. But what I realized later on was that the key actually was Christ, and the necklace that the key is on are like the arms, the crucified arms, and what was behind it was the blood. And again, this whole book is about the hero's journey. This whole book is about this cosmic Christ concept that Jesus essentially dialed in these coordinates through a human life, or an allegedly human life. He dialed in these coordinates that show you this story that, according to Joseph Campbell, which we'll meet in a minute here, shows up in all these different ancient mythological traditions. And so the ancient mythologies, the reason why we keep telling these stories and why other stories are discarded is that they get near this hero's journey, pure, what Joseph Campbell called a monomyth. The monomyth being something that is one story, and for whatever reason, people keep having dreams, they keep having visions, they keep having these stunning experiences with alleged angelic or extraterrestrial beings, and the stories that they tell then follow this pattern. So you look at Greek mythology, you look at Native American mythology, you look at Celtic mythology, you look at Turkish mythology, Byzantine myths, you go back to even Sumerian. It doesn't even matter where in history you go. Every culture has certain mythological stories, or we now call them mythological. And those stories contain this seed of similarity. There's always a hero who goes on a quest, who goes up against a villain, and the villain nearly kills him. He looks like he's dead. He rises from the dead. That's Easter. And then he defeats the villain. And you go into as he rises from the dead, you go into Act 3, the last 25% of the story. We're going to get into more detail on that. Now, in the book Synchronicity Key, we also talk about the 25,000-year cycle extensively and how it's described in the Law of One as a length of time that has, they call it a cycle, and it leads up to some type of quantum leap. And I talk about this in the book. There's a quantum leap, and it's associated with the sun giving off a bright flash of light in many different ancient mythologies. There is a solar flash, as I call it. It's not a supernova. The sun doesn't explode. It just kind of goes and blows off some, like a full corona mass ejection. The whole entire full halo of the sun. Full halo corona mass ejection. But then the sun stays intact. This apparently happens according to the Law of One. They don't directly say solar flash, but there's a lot of insinuation, and then you connect some dots on these data points, and it's all there, that there's a 25,000-year cycle, and that at the end of the cycle, there's a solar flash. Well, the solar flash is apparently catastrophic to life on Earth. It would cause a pole shift. It would cause the Earth to slide on its axis in space, and then you get these hurricanes, and you get these tornadoes. You get 80-foot-high tsunami across all of America. Super volcanoes go off. Most people are buried in 40 to 400 feet of rock. you're buried under rocks, and I have had those dreams. I had all these disaster dreams from like 2009 to 2013 in so many examples of every type of weird, catastrophic, earth change, death you could ever imagine. I had to go through these as if they were happening to me. I'm screaming. I'm watching volcanoes. I'm watching the earth open up. I'm watching a tsunami coming right towards me. I would be so freaking scared. I'd wake up. I'd be crying sometimes. These dreams were so bad. And I had like 50 or 60 of them at least. Every single type of weird earth change, including one where I got trapped in a building and we were able to figure out somehow that there had just been all this rock that had gotten dumped on top of us, and we're just only going to live as long as whatever food we can find in the building. I mean, horrifying dreams like that. And that's what I was into. You know, I was in the Art Bell crowd, and back in 96 when I got started, everybody's expecting the big pole shift. Everybody's expecting earth changes. Everybody's expecting tsunamis. And, you know, Edgar Cayce's prophecy said, 1998. And then that ended up being something that didn't happen. We altered the timeline. There was a timeline where we could have lost our planet in 1998. And I talk about that in the Michael prophecies. But now we're at this point where, okay, supposedly the Mayan calendar end date of December 21st, 2012, that's what all the buzz is about. Oh, that's when there's going to be a solar flash. And I taught this for years and years, beginning in 2008, and I probably have some of it in Synchronicity Key here as well. I was really into this. I believed this was true. I believed this is what was going to happen. So I spent a long time getting really into the science of what the heck is going on. But then the Law of One source also said that the 25,000 years is a major cycle, and that it also has minor cycles in it that very dramatically affect our lives. And I was able to figure out that when they said minor cycle, they must be talking about the age of the zodiac. So right now, we've just entered into the age of Aquarius, supposedly, as of, again, according to some astrologers in France, 2012. 2012 is when we went, ironically, right, from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, just like the song from the 60s. So, again, very weird that the exact year that you're supposed to go into the age of Aquarius is the exact same year that the Mayan calendar ends on December 21st, 2012. That the entrance into the age of Aquarius and this whole other system of astrology, which is from the other side of the planet across the Atlantic Ocean, you're telling me that that system of astrology has the same information in it as what we're seeing in the Mayan calendar, that it ends on the same frickin' year, and one of them is 5,125 years long, and the other one is 2,160 years long, and oh yeah, it's no big deal. They just happen to land on 2012 at the same time. Right, okay. I'm not asking you to like give up your beliefs or anything, but I'm just going to tell you and be honest about this, and I'm going to say, look, how in the hell do you explain that? How in the heck, if you're just going to not be one of these inflammatory rhetoric skeptics who doesn't really ever concede in an intellectual discussion, they just pivot to another attack, and they usually go after your character, please explain to me why they both landed on 2012. You don't think that means anything? And then you find out, wait a minute, you take the age of the zodiac, 2,160 years, and you multiply it by 12, and you get 25,920 years. That's this cycle. The Law of One says that you get this quantum leap at the end. And yeah, there's earth changes, but then they also mention that it leads to this acceleration in your soul, that you become like this elevated human. You become some type of new human. Similar to, again, why did they not recognize Jesus when he already pulled off the trick of reincarnation, well, a regular like reanimation from the dead with Lazarus. But Lazarus looked the same, right? So when Jesus comes out looking like somebody else, and then he's got to show them his hands, that's a whole new body, okay? That's what the prophecy says is going to happen to everybody. You will have a new body. It will be a light body, and it's activated by this solar change. So that's what was really fascinating. The Law of One was taking a concept that I thought was so esoteric there could be no science behind it, this concept of ascension or rapture in the Bible, like the concept of what Jesus appeared as during Easter, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, it doesn't really make any sense that this, if they're saying that something big is going to happen to Earth, there would have to be some corollary scientific data that we can look at that where we say, yeah, I can get it. Okay, that makes sense. I can see how that explains why something would happen. So I figured just on a pure level of regular science, any type of regular science, if you're going to change into something else, you got to have an energetic shift. There's got to be a surge in energy. If we're going to change into these light bodies, the amount of energy in us has to go up somehow. And that was what got me into Richard Hoagland's world in the first place, is we did this whole paper on interplanetary climate change. And I came up with 127 references from NASA showing that our entire solar system is going through this massive energetic charge up. And that massive energetic charge up is visible in terms of the brightness increasing, the magnetic fields increasing. They get these new aurora borealis outside the planet. They get these plasma clouds. They're getting more volcanic activity, more heating. They're getting, again, global warming on Mars. Mars ice caps are melting. Venus got 2,500% brighter on the night side just since the 1970s. Jupiter had an amazing amount of stuff going on. Same thing with Saturn. Same thing with Uranus. Uranus gives substantial brightness increases. Neptune is going through staggering brightness increases. Pluto is heating up even though it's moving away from the sun. Earth is getting all kinds of weird stuff. This new noctilucent cloud formation. There was a new belt. They actually call it new belt. Showed up in 1998 in the Van Allen belts of our Earth, and it's interstellar material that doesn't usually show up on Earth. We've had a 400% increase in earthquake activity, 400% increase in volcanic activity, natural disasters. It has nothing to do with, climate change is not going to be happening whether we're here or not. It's going to still be going on. So no matter what we're doing to the Earth, there is some big cycle dragging the whole solar system through this. And again, all of these different planetary observations unilaterally show us they are leading up to an energetic charge distribution, a sort of an arc out from the sun. The planets are getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. They're getting brighter and brighter. They're doing all this weird stuff. It's been cataloged by NASA. This is one of the things I built my whole career and reputation on, was doing all this science. And it's freaking mind-blowing. Because where is this going? What is going to happen when the sun reaches, when our solar system reaches a certain energetic level? Because the planets are just getting, they're getting hotter and hotter, like something's going on. Well, the answer again would be the sun could have a coronal arc discharge. It can release a bunch of energy all at once, and then it can relax again. But in the process, our solar system is transformed, and this is a biologically active transformation that changes who you are as a soul and activates this light body that got me crying when I was thinking about it in The Matrix. That's an example of the moment he stands up and he can stop the bullets. It's just so freaking awesome. So again, I'm looking for the solar flash, right? And then I stumble across one of my greatest eurekas of all time, okay? It came out of the understanding that the 25,000-year cycle is caused by our orbit around another star, which is very likely to be Alpha Centauri. Alpha Centauri has the two Alpha Centauri stars, and then it also has a little guy called Proxima Centauri. He's a lot smaller. And that star, which again, we're right next to it, 4.27 light years away, Proxima Centauri, the little guy over here, had a solar flash at the same time that we were supposed to have one, December 21st, 2012. The light didn't get to us until March 2016. I think it was March 17th or something like that. I calculated the dates. I've done that. Again, it's in this video that's available at thedisclosure.com. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I did all the math, and it's also in several of my YouTube videos in the past. I don't want to keep repeating things. Some of you guys get mad at me if I do that. But this is important. I found out, first of all, that we've got this binary solar system. And then we're also dealing with geometry that could be coming off of these stars in a large enough pattern that as they orbit each other, they're going through geometry that the other one is making. They're vibrating and these geometric patterns appear. You can't see them, they're invisible, but they represent essentially gravitational stress points. And there's these areas where gravity is going to spin faster. And that gravitational spin I call the source field, and it's associated with biological life and your level of consciousness. So if you go to a higher vibration, it literally means your soul starts evolving, you become smarter, and you will eventually turn into this metahuman state, providing that your planet doesn't blow up in the process. So again, you have two stars, they're orbiting each other in 25,000 years. If you put Alpha Centauri in the middle and you put the sun on the outside, you can draw a circle and then say, okay, that's a circular orbit, and it's going to take 25,000 years to go through that orbit. So then, when I started to think about the 25,000 years that way as a circle, okay, and then I start to say, well, all of these cycles could chop up the circle into little pieces. So is there any way to do that with the Mayan calendar? And when I discovered it, I got so excited, I literally started running around. This was one of the greatest things of my whole life as a nerd. I'm very embarrassed to say that, but it's true. So I found out it's pentagonal. The 5,125-year cycle is pentagonal. I showed you this last time. I want to explain a little better. So again, we live in a binary solar system with a 25,920-year orbit. We talked about that. We're orbiting Alpha Centauri. These different cycles that the law of one and other sources talk about, they all, in their own way, add up to 25,920 years, including the Mayan calendar and the ages of the zodiac. So here it is, folks. This was my big breakthrough. I was so excited when I remember right where I was, up in my bedroom in Topanga. 5,125 years times 5 is 25,625, which again is very, very close to 25,920. And what's even more interesting is that 25,920 is actually a measurement of this wobble in the Earth's axis. And when they calculate, it's called the precession of the equinoxes, and supposedly the Earth is counter-rotating, and we're watching the constellations drift. So if you're like in Central America and you want to build a pyramid in ancient times, and you want to align it with the stars, guess what, dude? In 72 years, you're off by 1 degree already, because the stars don't stay in the same place during the solstice or during the equinox. They precede, they move during the equinox. So it's called precession of the equinox. The stars are moving. They don't stay in the same place. And it takes 25,920 years in the pure sense to go through that. But when they actually calculate the precession, it's closer to 25,627 years, which is only 2 years away from this, 25,625. And when I saw that, I'm like, wow. Because we don't, there's some kind of gravitational disruption around the precession so that when we try to calculate it, we don't quite get it right. And Walter Cruttenden, the guy who discovered this about the binary solar system, he says that lag from 25,920 is because of the binary solar system, and he's got a whole explanation for that. So again, I'm tripping out on this because I say if I draw a circle, I'm going to get geometry, and then the age of the zodiac times 12, once again, bang, 25,920. So I talked about that last time, and I showed you all those graphics, and I'm trying not to repeat very much. But I want to show you this again because it's so important. So here we are with the pentagon around the 25,920-year orbit of our solar system around Alpha Centauri. And if you add in this period of 5,125 years, well, by God, it chops up that circle into 5 different pieces. And they're all exactly 5,125 years in length. You add all that up, as I just said in the previous slide here, and boom, it's right next to the same number. So this actually works. You can actually do this. You can chop it up into 5 pieces like this, and there's your Mayan calendar. Now, what I'm actually visualizing as I see this is the geometry, but also that it's made out of spheres like this. Okay? That's another thing that's really important that I didn't get into last time, is that when you're looking at the geometry, all of these different geometric patterns that I discovered can be made with close packed spheres. That means you're taking spheres and you put them together into a little matrix pattern, okay? So the close packed spheres in this case, once again, that is the Mayan calendar pentagonal pattern that we see, so that as we are orbiting this other star in the 25,920 year orbit, we're actually going through those 5 spheres that I just illustrated for you. But the way this science works, the way the geometry works, is that there's spheres that make up these shapes, but then you can connect the outside midpoints of the spheres, the outer point that's right on the edge, and you get geometric patterns. The geometric patterns are made out of smaller spheres packed together, and they're all the same width in diameter. And what's interesting, again, is that, like, if you're looking at this hologram in the Mayan calendar, I want you to imagine now we're starting at the 12 o'clock point and we're following the movement of the clock hand. And then what we're seeing is that there's a sphere that we go through, and then there's another one, and we go through 5 spheres in 25,920 years. But what if I said that the actions that you had on each sphere are etched into it like a stylus, so that when you go to the next sphere, you're playing over the same pattern again? That's one of the really weird things about this science, is that history is repeating itself, as I talked about last time, in the 2,160-year cycle. But then the Mayans are charting this Mayan calendar cycle, which is built off of these 5 spheres. And again, that would be a massive pentagonal structure. It's actually a dodecahedron between Alpha Centauri and our sun. I'm saying this actually exists in space as a gravitational force field. We move through it 5 times. The Maya were calculating that cycle, and they call it the 5,125 years. And then they're expecting that we're going to go into the 5th root race. Some outrageous thing is going to happen to all human beings at the end of this 5,125 year cycle, which we're expecting December 21st, 2012. Mayan calendar prophecy says the activation of some type of new human. And then, of course, solar flash, but then we didn't have that. It happened on Proxima Centauri, but it didn't happen here, nor did we have a pole shift. But there was a pole shift that started in 2001 and peaked in 2013 and then stopped. It's as if the whole Mayan calendar disaster prophecy came true, but we didn't have a catastrophe. And that's what the Michael prophecies actually said. So there is, going back to the slide now, we're going through these 5 spheres, and each time we do something on one of them, it etches into a record album, if you will, and it's psychologically influencing us in the next cycle. We don't have to repeat the pattern, but we're going to have the same kind of setups, the same type of wars or conflicts. According to the Edgar Cayce research, we reincarnate with the same people over and over again. Most of us have a soul family. It's usually between 20 and 40 people that keep reincarnating with us over and over again. Actually, the more advanced your soul is, the more size your soul family has, the more members it has. But everybody seems to have these soul families. And so the people who are closest to you in your life right now, don't think that you're not excluded from this. You're totally included. You are living with the people you've known before. The people who are closest to you now are people you've had in your life before. And there is a place that we go to, the afterlife state, which I talk about extensively in the book, with all the scientific data from Dr. Raymond Moody and these afterlife studies. I mean, it's fascinating that everybody experiences near-death stuff where they go through the tunnel, they go to the light, they have a life review, they meet a guide. There's a whole 10 or 11 part sequence that everybody goes through. It's pretty much the same, and almost anybody can get reverted into the in-between life state with hypnosis. So Dr. Michael Newton wrote Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls. Those are the 2 books you really need to read if you want to learn about this. And he finds that all these different hypnotic subjects, he knows exactly where they are in the afterlife when he's hypnotizing them based on what they say. So Jesus somehow dies and his body is dead, but then he comes back looking different. That's the new human. That's being born again. That's what supposedly, according to Michael prophecies, is going to happen to all of us with this non-catastrophic solar energy release. So now we're going to get to the next thing. There is a solar flash every time we hit one of these nodes on the Pentagon. And I, again, did a bad job of explaining this to you, so I'm going to do a better job this time. The glaciologist, Dr. Lonnie Thompson, discovered this. Here he is. I believe this is a real photo in front of one of these glacial deposits that he was taking ice core samples from. So again, this is the headline as I photographed it way back in the day with bad, probably it was like Netscape or something like that was the browser I was probably using. Major climate change occurred 5,200 years ago. Evidence suggests that history could repeat itself. So then I went there today to the same link, which I'll show you right now. And this is what it looks like now. So they definitely cleaned up their web design. I'd say this is definitely a huge improvement. You know, all this is like Times New Roman and some bolding and italicized, you know, but this is like a lot better. It's sans serif. It just looks nice. So again, wait a minute, 5,200 years ago, didn't I just hear that somewhere? Yeah, you heard 5,125 years, which is only 75 years off, and that's the Mayan calendar, and there's 5 of them that fits perfectly into the 25,000 years, as I just showed you. Okay, but now he's saying that there was a major climate change that occurred at this exact time. He's only 75 years off of the Mayan calendar, and he never realized that it was the Mayan calendar. That's never mentioned in the paper. It was so amazing. I'm like, oh my gosh, he doesn't understand this yet. And that gives me an opportunity to go in there and, you know, make new discoveries, which is really exciting as a nerd. You know, I love that. So I'm going to read this to you. Here we go. This is the link. It still works today. I mean, maybe it won't once I say this, but, you know, it does right now. Glaciologist Lonnie Thompson worries that he may have found clues that show history repeating itself. And if he is right, the result could have important implications to modern society. As in, well, yeah, I mean, the sun's going to blow up, it's going to cook us, and we're all going to freaking die. So, like, that's the implication, all right? But he's not really going there. Yeah, it has important implications. Okay, that's true. If this repeats itself, we're screwed. Thompson has spent his career trekking to the far corners of the world to find remote ice fields and then bring back cores that he drilled out of their centers. Within those cores are the records of ancient climate from across the globe. From the mountains of data drawn by analyzing countless... Oh, my God. That's what I get for trying to be too much of a narrator. I'm trying to get into my narrator voice, you guys. Did you feel it? You got to change everything. All the nuance has to change sentence by sentence. That's the whole point. Constant emotional texture change. Here we go. From the mountains of data drawn by analyzing countless ice cores and a meticulous review of sometimes obscure historic records, Thompson and his research team at Ohio State University are convinced that the global climate has changed dramatically. You like that narration? Isn't that nice? Yeah, it's nice. But more importantly, they believe it has happened at least once before, and the results were nearly catastrophic to emerging cultures at the time. Oh, I don't know about that. He outlined his interpretations and fears today at the annual meeting of the AGU in San Francisco. You know, I'm sure everybody would have really loved this outfit at the AGU meeting, right? If it's in San Francisco, we can safely assume the sizzle jacket is going to be like a hummingbird feeder for so many men who are going to come up to me. That's all I'm going to say. It would just be amazing. I'm just joking. Just calm down. A professor of geological sciences at Ohio State and a researcher with the Bird Polar Research Center. Thompson points to markers in numerous records suggesting that the climate was altered suddenly some 5,200 years ago with severe impacts. He lists the shift by the Sahara Desert from a habitable region to a barren desert. That doesn't sound too good. Major changes in plant pollen uncovered from lake bed cores in South America, as in plants all died off. And the record lowest levels of methane retrieved from ice cores in Greenland and Antarctica. All of this occurred at the same time 5,200 years ago. And then I put a ... because the article goes on from there, and he talks about that there was this caveman that was found with food in his pocket, and he died 5,200 years ago. He's walking along, happy as hell. He's got his mushrooms, he's got weed, he's got whatever kind of stuff he's carrying. They found all kinds of things in this guy, but he died in some big flash freeze 5,200 years ago. Okay, well that's that guy, right? And then he's got all this data, and it's really, really amazing. And it all occurred, just so happens to be, it can't mean anything. It just so happens to be when the last Mayan calendar started. Oh, that's nothing. ETs wouldn't bother to worry about a big old solar flash, would they? They don't care. No, of course they care. They don't want to be here when it happens. If you're going to lose the Sahara Desert from a habitable region into what it is now, oh my God. Something happened back at this time and it was monumental, he said. But it didn't seem monumental to humans then because there were only approximately 250 million people occupying the planet compared to the 6.4 billion we now have. Well, that's 250 million very grumpy individuals. They're very, very grumpy about what the heck is going on when the Sahara suddenly goes from a habitable region to this flash-frozen or flash-cooked wasteland, right? And we're going to find out it's flash-cooked, actually, so get ready for it. The evidence clearly points back to this point in history and to some event that occurred. It also points to similar changes occurring in today's climate as well, he said. So just all you guys in the pink shirts here at AGU, just panic at your leisure. Panic at your leisure. Take a smoke break, go do something fun with yourselves or with each other because this is it, man. This thing happens again. We are hash browns. We're all done. We're going to be baked potatoes. And in this game of hot potato, you don't pass the potato, right? It's just like the potato's already cooked. Maybe you left it in the oven too long. There's smoke. You blackened it all out. It's not even going to be any good anymore. If there's 1,000 degrees Celsius burn on the surface of the earth, we're pretty much toast. And hardly anybody's going to make it unless you're underground. And so the elites were all aware of this, and they knew about this in their secret programs. They were expecting the solar flash to happen, and they were ready for it. That's why they build all that underground stuff. That's the main reason. So then he says, it also points to similar changes. Okay, yeah, panic at your leisure. Could happen again today. It's a cycle. And then we're going to skip ahead a little bit. He says, the impact of a climate change of that magnitude on our modern world would be tremendous. As in, nah, you're not going to live through this, dude. Like, go ahead and build your stupid shelter, but like, you're going to get, the roof is going to melt, Like, what are you thinking, man? And so that's why they built it underground. They built these deep underground military bases, 1 or 2 miles down below the surface. It's a honeycomb earth. There's all these huge caverns, 20 to 40 miles wide. All the insiders tell me this. It's something I've heard from just about everybody. And you can go and move in down there. And you can set up lighting and have a whole city with running water and rivers and streams and trees, outdoors, buildings, birds. It looks like it sort of looks like you're on Earth, except that the roof is made of some type of holographic projection of a sky. It's not real. And they have artificial lighting. And apparently, Pete Peterson told me you can also hear the fans running all the time. And there's also kind of an oily smell in the air all the time. But other than the sound of the fans and the oily smell, you can kind of feel like you're on the surface of the earth when you're down there. And they wanted to live in these places. There's apparently 225 of them or something like this. It's crazy. So again, the impact of this climate change on the modern world would be tremendous. And there were classified projects in the government where they'd already found this evidence that he rediscovered about the ice cores and stuff. And they knew it was going to happen again, or they thought it would. And so they were preparing to just have everybody on the surface get cooked and they would hide out underneath. That was the whole plan. And this is where it really gets interesting. Thompson believes that the 5,200-year-old event may have been caused by, oh my God, a dramatic fluctuation in solar energy reaching the Earth. Yeah, I would say that dramatic is a word we could use. Catastrophic might be a better one. I mean, it's certainly not like you're going to live through this, right? This is utterly catastrophic. If the Sahara turns into a desert and, Iceman is toast, what happened? Evidence shows around 5,200 years ago, the sun's output first dropped precipitously and then, oh my God, it surged over a short period. Yeah, All right, and that's a solar flash, isn't it, right? That's a solar flash. Holy crap. And then we go on from here. It is this huge solar energy oscillation that Thomson believes may have triggered the utterly disastrous climate change he sees in all those records. And he says the evidence is clear that a major climate change is again underway. And remember, what did the title of the paper say? It said, evidence suggests history could repeat itself. He was hinting at the idea that it was cyclical. So when we go back to the diagram I showed you before, we have a pentagonal structure of the Mayan calendar in a circle. The Mayan calendar divides the circle of 25,920 units into 5 chunks of 5,125 units. Sorry. So there's this 5 pieces of 5,125, and that every time we reach the end of the Mayan calendar, the last time we did, what happened? Oh, that's right, there was a solar flash and it wiped out all this crap on Earth. Okay, well now we're at the end of the next one, and what happened? Well, again, as I said, we did have a solar flash on December 21st, right on time, but it was next door because apparently the binary solar system that we're in discharged this charged up energy away from our own solar system and blew it out through Proxima. So as I was saying before, this is from Sacred Science of Michael. There are 11 documentaries where I go into way more detail about this stuff with incredible amounts of evidence, thousands of slides. And it's an online course at thedisclosure.com. And if you put in the word jubilation, you can get a huge discount. I also want to say I am, again, going to be appearing at Disclosure Summit 2024. This is a conference. You can go to this link, which I do now have in the comments in this particular video. So click on that, then I get credit for it. And that means I get paid more. So just bear that in mind. Thank you. So this is a first live event I've done in so long. I mean, I just was like, with all the threat profile and the fact that I'm doing aerospace now and the stuff that I've heard people telling me on the phone and in various briefings, it's like, yeah, I'm not really that interested in going public anymore. But we have good security at this event, and our own Stavati CEO is going to be there, Chris Beskar. So again, thedisclosuresummit.com/David, or just go into the link down there. So I was talking about these geometric structures, and the geometric structures, of course, not only affect this binary solar system where we're seeing a huge pentagon drawn by the Mayan calendar. If we take Walter Cruttenden's theory that the 25,000 years is caused by a binary solar system, which I believe is true. Make it into a circle. Now you can put geometry in it. The geometry explains both the pentagonal geometry gives you the Mayan calendar, and the Merkaba geometry gives you the ages of the zodiac, as I showed you last time. You take the Star of David and you put the midpoints in there, and you got 12 segments. And those are your 12 ages of the zodiac. So the way that we know that this is happening is that we see the same thing in the planets. So as I said here, if you look, as I said last time, between Venus and Mars, there's clearly, again, a dodecahedron there. There's your 5 spheres. You notice those 5 spheres again? And you see how those spheres come together and they're making the dodecahedron? I'm getting some awesome donations, so thank you guys. I appreciate that. I'm about to drink some water too. So look at this for a minute as I drink the water. What we're seeing here on the top is the relationship between the diameters of the orbits of Venus and Mars, if you make them not elliptical, but you perfect them in a computer and you turn it into a circle. Now, he was able to do this, John Martineau, the author of this work, was able to do this with modern computer technology. How did they know it back during the time of, Copernicus? And this is not new stuff. Copernicus was trying to solve the solar system as a geometric pattern and see that the planetary orbits were spaced from each other according to these geometric relationships. So he wasn't able to do it because he didn't have the right computer. But then in modern times we did. And so when you make them into these spheres, the orbits are now the diameters of spheres. This is another really important point. In the old way of looking at the solar system, we see the planet And we think about it like an electron going around a nucleus. It's just one object. It's this solid piece of matter. There's nothing else there. Now I want you to see, as you see these diagrams, that the planet itself is one point on a giant sphere that moves with the planet, a sphere of energy, in the entire planet's orbit. That's what it's drawn by. That's the diameter of the sphere. There is a sphere of energy that moves with the planet as it's moving. Okay? And so all of that plasma is moving at the same time that the planet does, and there's lots of great stuff in Sacred Science of Michael where I show this, like in the Jupiter. Look at the Trojan asteroids and the Hilda asteroids and notice how they're in a big triangle. Okay, go look that up. Look up an animation of Jupiter's Trojan and Hilda asteroids and watch how they all flow through a triangle. What the hell is a triangle for? Nobody ever tells you that. It's geometry. It's a geometric flow of gravity that captures all these asteroids and forces them to flow through this triangular pattern. So John Martineau's work, which I go through again in the Sacred Science course, I go through all the planets in the solar system, and most of these alignments, when you do it in a computer, they're 99.9% perfect. So that means that when you're looking at these geometric relationships like you see right here, okay, between Venus and Mars, you got a dodecahedron. Between Earth and Mars, you've got an icosahedron. That means the diameters of their orbits are now sphere diameters, right? And when you look at how the spheres are related to each other, you can fit these close-packed spheres inside. So when we see up in Venus and Mars, sure enough, there's a bunch of these round circles inside the big circle. Those are the close-packed spheres that make that dodecahedron. So when I was showing you the Mayan calendar inside the circle, and I showed you 5 little circles, those are the 5 little circles inside that pentagon that you see up at the top. You see how there's a pentagon there? And it's got lines coming off of it, and it's kind of in the middle of the circle inside. And then around that pentagon, you see there's 5 smaller circles. Well, that's exactly what the science is. And so what I'm saying is, in the cycles of history, the events that happen in history on one sphere within this geometry carry over to the next one and all the others. They're all holographically interconnected, and it's all the hero's journey. The sphere tells you the hero's journey. That's what's so weird about this. So again, this is very, very fascinating, and it turns out that all the planets have this relationship with each other. They're all doing this in their own way, and it's a gravitational current caused by geometry. Like we mentioned in Richard C. Hoagland's 19.5, this is rotating currents of energy inside a planet now, not in the solar system. But here it causes the great red spot on Jupiter, it causes the great dark spot on Neptune, it causes cloud bands on Saturn and Jupiter. It stops the sunspots from going any higher or lower on the sun. They only go up to 19.5, which is this magical alignment when you get, again, the Merkaba shape I was talking about, and you put it inside the sphere. So that's the same shape that is being made by the 25,000-year orbit we have around Proxima Centauri. It's the same shape that when you divide into 12 segments, you get your 12 cycles of 2,160 years in the historical tradition that we're talking about. So the point again is, if you can now look at this geometry, but again think about it as if it was interstellar between our star and another star, as you start at north and then you move to around the clock, starting clockwise like you're the hand of the clock, and you move to where it says 19.47, imagine that as you reach the point where it says 19.47, in your orbit there on that white circle, as you hit that red corner of that red triangle, now you're in an energy zone, dude. Now you're in a zone where the energy is really going to heat up. And what does it do? Well, in the Mayan calendar one, which is pentagonal, boom, the sun goes off and you get a solar flash. Lonnie Thompson said it happened 5,200 years ago. There it is. Bang, we got it. The geometry causes this to happen. When you get to the point on the geometry, things go crazy. The sun blows up. But there's also this energetic advancement of humanity. And so again, we're at the end of the 25,000-year cycle. That's when the law of one says we're supposed to go through this energetic upgrade. So as you go along in this pattern, your vibrational frequencies can rise or fall. And this again gets into the 12 cycles within the orbit I talked about last time. You take your Merkaba, which I've now simplified as a 2D Star of David. That just makes it a lot easier to visualize this, because otherwise I have to draw a whole bunch of circles and it just gets very complex looking. But it would look like the flower of life, okay? Just so you know. But anyway, you take your Star of David, right? I just showed you that. And now it's on the orbital level, not inside a planet. But you're chopping it up into these 12 segments. And then, as I just said, each of these is an age of the zodiac that lasts exactly 2,160 years. So again, I didn't want you to get hung up on the clock. I mean, that is how the Law of One described this. They said, imagine it as if it was a clock, which is very interesting they said that. And sure enough, it looks an awful lot like a clock. And as I talked about last time, history is moving in these 2,160-year cycles, so that as we go through these 12 intervals, imagine again there's 12 circles, and whatever happens on the last circle is going to happen again on the next one. That is the hero's journey. That is the wheel of karma. That circle is the story. It's the Christ. The Christ is all there is. The one infinite creator is all there is, okay? Everybody is a part of it. There's nothing else. That's the basic Law of One philosophy. And so since everybody is connected to this infinite intelligence, the infinite intelligence is causing us to reincarnate, and as we appear in each of these spheres, we look the same as we did in the last sphere. And only the sphere itself is actually evolving, but it's not in linear time. Beings like Archangel Michael are actually able to manipulate multiple moments in time at once by changing the sphere itself. And the sphere is in a state of becoming. So there might appear to be 12 of them in this geometric diagram that I just showed you, but that's not really true. There's only one of them there. It just looks like it's in 12 different places because we have the illusion of space and time. You follow me so far? History is moving in these 2,160-year cycles, and about half of the entire book that I wrote is all dedicated to things like the equivalence of cyclical history between Rome and the United States. It's incredibly fascinating. It gets into things like the points in time, the exact moments that wars start and end, how many years does it happen, where are they invading, what's going on. It gets into very specific historical events, and the people who are involved in these historical events appear to be reincarnating and then repeating or hopefully improving their karma from one lifetime to the next. And in the case of some of them, they didn't get any better. In the case of others, they did. Okay, so for example, and I did go through this last time, I'm just going to run it again so you get the link between the geometry and the people. We have this guy, Scipio Africanus, who reincarnates as Richard Nixon. And all I had to do is go find a photograph of a sculpture of Scipio and then put it next to a picture of Richard Nixon. And we see remarkable similarities, especially in the eyes, the baggy eyes underneath. You notice they both have the funny baggy eyes. The nose is sort of alike, but really it's this kind of leering stare. It's the way the lips and the mouth hang, the shape of the chin, the shape of the jowls. He's a little younger here on the left. But what's so freaking weird is that this researcher in 1980, this French researcher François Masson, found that the Watergate scandal, which was a big deal, right? Richard Nixon gets caught wiretapping his Democratic opponents' offices. He gets caught wiretapping them, and it goes public, and at that time, everybody had this illusion that there's nothing really wrong. I mean, the Kennedy assassinations and the Martin Luther King assassinations got people thinking, but most people were still asleep. They don't want to believe in this idea of some greater unseen force that's manipulating events here, but that became undeniable in Watergate. And I was born right in the middle of it in 1973, and my mother said that every time the news would come on about Watergate that I would start crying in my crib. It was like I could feel people awakening to the darkness of what was really there. And this whole scandal led to Richard Nixon having to resign as a president, which has almost never happened before. Maybe it never, there's probably a couple others somewhere, but in modern times, he resigned and he actually stepped down from office. Yeah. And then Lyndon Baines Johnson steps in and becomes President Johnson. And then it goes from Johnson to Carter. Okay. And I remember all this stuff because I grew up, again, I was born in 1973, and my dad was a news junkie. So we're always watching CBS News with Walter Cronkite or Dan Rather every night. So, well, okay, that's Richard Nixon. But what are you talking about with regards to Roman history? Well, Scipio Africanus got involved in a scandal where he was essentially, I forget what it was, but they were at war with this particular country, and he was, I think he was bribing them with money, with gold coins, to not end the war. He wanted to keep it going, so it's like this big ugly scandal because, wait a minute, you're saying that our emperor, or whatever he was at the time, I think he was still an emperor, right? That he is like paying off the enemy to keep the war going so people will keep dying, and for whatever reason, he just doesn't want it to end. And so people were frickin' pissed. I mean, people were ready to kill this guy. It ends up in the arena. You know, they wanted to give him the death penalty. I'm sure of it. Because he was trading with the enemy and he was killing people for money. That's basically what it turned out to be. It was really horrible. Well, he gets called into the center of the arena and they hand him the books that show the proof that he did this. And right in front of all the people, he rips the books apart. He tears them apart, he throws them on the ground, and he says, that's it, I resign as emperor, and he retreats off to his little island, and he lives the rest of his life eating mangoes and papayas and grapefruits and beautiful figs and all these kinds of things, okay? That's what probably ended up happening. Well, that's what we know it did happen. He resigned. And so this researcher in 1980 from France, Francois Masson, had found that the exact time that Scipio Africanus resigned, if you take it exactly 2,160 years later, that's exactly when Nixon resigned. It's making the hair stand up on my, it's so freaking creepy, dude. It's like, exactly 2,160 years? Yeah, down to almost the freaking day. This stuff is that good. And then I found new ones on my own with like 9/11 was one of the ones I found. But getting back to Francois Masson's data, this is also something he didn't even notice. He didn't even pick up on the fact that they had facial similarities at all. He only picked up on the cyclical connection of these very strange linkages between them over 2,160 years. The next one he found, which was in politics at the time, is Cato the censor reincarnates as Jimmy Carter. And this is really fascinating because, once again, on my own, I looked at the faces. He never did this. He never noticed any facial similarity. And I said, well, my God, there's Carter on the left, and here's Cato on the right, and they look almost exactly the same. And again, if you go through Synchronicity Key, there's very precise moments in Carter's life that overlap exactly the same with Cato the censor. The whole way in which Cato changed the government, all the stuff that Jimmy Carter did after he was president, going around doing all this humanitarian work, he was a really great guy. He did all this charitable work around the world, and I really do think he wanted to help the alliance, and he was doing the best he could. And the same thing happened with Cato. Cato became this amazing guy who did all these great things for Rome and really kind of cleaned up the mess of Scipio Africanus. And so in Roman history, Cato comes in, I think, directly after Scipio Africanus. In American history, you got LBJ in between. But there's these incredible overlaps between Carter and Cato, and it includes, like, Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer. Cato farmed, I think it might have even been the same thing. It might have been peanuts or something very similar. How they grew up in the country, how they became a political figure, it's freaking crazy. But the one that really attracts all the attention most of the time is Hannibal reincarnating as Hitler. And here's the facial similarity. It's astonishing, right? Hitler is Hannibal, but with his beard shaved, and he just decided to keep this little piece underneath his nose, which now is so universally associated with Hitler, you can't grow that. You can't actually bust out this stash and expect you're going to get a job anywhere. You would be a white supremacist, or whatever race you are. They're just going to call you a white supremacist anyway. It doesn't even matter anymore what race you are. But what the hell is going on here? My God, they look the same. It's just like the same guy, and in the left he's looking out there and he's got a beard, and on the right he's looking more in the other way. Maybe the nose is a little tiny bit different, but they're also tilted in different angles on their heads. The ear is almost the same. I mean, it's just really, really weird. The ear looks like it was photoshopped from one to the other. The lips are the same. The nose is the same. The brow is the same. The eyes are the same. And again, Francois Masson never discovered this. He didn't even bother to look at their faces. He wasn't even thinking of that. But there's these incredible things, like Hitler did this really bizarre thing where he set up an attack in Poland. It was called the Gliwicz incident, Gliewicz. And they staged this whole thing where they have dead bodies that were already dead, but then they put them somewhere else and make them look like, oh no, they died over here. And they simulated an attack on their own radio tower, and they blamed it on Poland, but it wasn't Poland. The Gliwicz incident was one of these FFs, okay? You know what that stands for. If you have a flag and then you try to make it false, take those two F words and put them together. That's why I'm being very careful in how I talk right now. The Gliwicz incident is something that they probably don't want to mention very often because they got caught, and it was not Poland who blew up their radio tower. They did it to themselves to have an excuse to go attack Poland. Okay? The exact same time, 2001 or 60 years earlier, that happened is when, I forget exactly what he did. I think it might have been when Hannibal killed his father. It was something really crazy. I think it was when Hannibal killed his father. Go back and look in the book. I don't remember now. But there's something Hannibal did exactly the same time the Gliwicz incident happened that's got the same kind of energy to it. But then the whole outline of World War II, what they do, even the land they invaded, and Masson pointed out that Hannibal had this blitzkrieg strategy with elephants, that when you got elephants, they can run. And so there's literally people riding elephants, and it was a much faster form of battle than anything they'd seen before, because normally soldiers just march, and marching is slower, but elephants can run. So Hannibal got this idea that he was going to take big groups of elephants and capture the elephants and train them for military, and they got battle armor, and this becomes Hitler making tanks. Tanks are reinforced. They're covered with metal. It's very heavy metal. It's where the term heavy metal music probably came from. Big military machines like this. And so it's a very similar strategy, except one is battle elephants and one is battle machines, battle tanks. But then they even conquered the same lands at the same times in the cycles 2,160 years apart. And Hitler's using blitzkrieg. And then, if that's not crazy enough, as I said before, we have this world history professor from Russia, Anatoly Fomenko, who concluded that all events in world history are cyclical. And this is the diagram that I showed you last time, and we'll get back to this in a second. Notice that we'll talk about the K, H, P, and C, but if you look at all 5 lines, you'll see KHPC keeps popping up. That's the 4-part structure of the hero's journey. Okay? We'll get to that in a second. I talked about these overlaps last time. We're not going to do that again, but the same kings, the same periods of time, they come and go in the same years in the 2 cycles. They do the same stuff. It's like we're in the frickin' Matrix. Here's another example. This time it's the first period of the Roman Episcopate and the second period. And I want to point out that Fomenko made some pretty oddball conclusions too that I wouldn't agree with. These historical cycles are so similar to each other that he concluded that historians fabricated them because they needed to fill space in their books. So he actually concluded that it's only been 800 years since the time of Christ or something like this. That was outrageous, but he shows that the history repeats itself so well that it's as if he can't believe that it really happened, that it actually played out this way. So his only conclusion was, okay, somebody had to have cheated, and then they took these notes about this part of history, and they copied them over, and then they okay, well, now it's this pope and it's this pope, but let's just go with the same years. We'll just change the names, but everything's just going to be like Boom, 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 boom. We're just going to write this history out. Let's just repeat it a couple times. That's what he thought was going on. And here's another example, Jewish kingdom to the Holy Roman German Empire. And he's got these amazing, the data is so deep. And then on the global level, you have this strange thing. So I want you to start up at the top, below the word European history, and I want you to look at where it says E, and then I want you to see K and H, which is yellow and green, and then P underneath the next K is orange, and C is blue, KHPC. You look at the next one over, and sure enough, it says KHPC right along the main line. Then look at the next line down, and it says KHPC. Next line down, KHPC. Next one says KNPC, or whatever that character is. And then the one on the bottom, KHPC. So as I'm trying to tell you here, KHP and C is a 4-part formula for the hero's journey. That's what he discovered. The beginning, middle, and end of the story. KHP and C is setup, conflict, and resolution. So it's happening in every single part of history. It's doing the same thing. We're an hour and a half in, but I do want to keep going because I'm going to probably use at least 2 hours, maybe even 2.5. I do not want to stop this. If you have to pause it and come back later, this would be a nice midpoint, okay? I'll just say that now. But the second half won't take as long. So anyway, as I was saying, this KHPC thing, what the hell? Yeah, it breaks down into 3 acts or 4 equal sections of space. And I'll show you that in a minute. And it's the story of Christ, which I normally don't say because I get, nervous that people are going to judge me and they're going, I don't like where he's going. But yeah, it's the story of Christ. And so, as I was telling you before, this story is showing up in every single ancient mythology there is. It's like people are just obsessed with telling this story over and over again. For some reason, they're totally addicted to it. Why is that? Why does everybody have the hero, and then he's got flaws, and then he's got to have a quest, and he's got to have a villain, and the worse the villain is, the better the hero is. They have like this polar opposition to each other. You need a really bad villain to make a really great hero, like in The Matrix. Agent Smith is really freaking bad. He can jump into anybody. He's got all these weird abilities. So you need a very evil character. And then the hero goes up against the evil, which could also represent in many, like in a romantic comedy, if you write a screenplay that way, the villain is often the hero's own doubts of himself or herself, or the inhibitions, or whatever, the lack of compassion, that they're too busy, whatever their flaw is that you established at the beginning, they have to surmount that flaw in order to reach their quest while facing off against the villain. So sometimes you don't have a villain per se except the hero themselves, and the hero is facing off against himself or herself. That's important. But again, this structure breaks down into 3 acts or 4 equal sections, K, H, P, and C. Anatoly Fomenko goes all the way back to Sumeria. He traces all Babylonian history, and he says no matter where you look, it's KHPC. It's the same story. It's like they're telling the same story over and over again in terms of the leaders like Hitler or like, Richard Nixon, Scipio Africanus. They tell the same story, and Carter, I think, actually did even better than he did as Cato, because Cato had this thing that he'd say at the end of every speech. It was pretty inflammatory. He'd say, Carthage must be destroyed. So no matter what he said, the last thing he said was, Carthage must be destroyed. And then people would go, and so he was warmongering. So in that case, I think Carter came back as actually kind of a better example of himself, because he's not always warmongering, he's actually looking for peace. So that would be an example of how the cycle evolves someone. Yes, he reincarnated. Yes, he looks the same. Yes, he did the same stuff, but he got a lot better as Carter, I believe. And so why did Watergate replay the exact same thing that happened with Scipio Africanus? Because Richard Nixon didn't learn his lessons. Richard Nixon didn't learn the lessons he was supposed to learn, so he repeats the exact same thing. He got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He was delaying the war to make money before. Now he's wiretapping his opponents. They catch him, and he resigned. And he resigns at exactly the same time, 2001, 60 years apart. Hitler does this weird attack on his own radio tower exactly 2,160 years before he killed his father. Really strange stuff. If you look at the same person with just a different name, first he was Hitler in our time, and then you go back and now he's Hannibal, and my God, they do the same stuff. It's very incredible. And the facial similarity aspect is very incredible. What in the hell are we living in? And I would argue that there's really only one sphere, and we keep modifying it in nonlinear time. So we could change the past by healing the present. We can heal wars that happened before so that in those timelines, the wars don't need to happen. One of the most provocative things Archangel Michael said was that Atlantis doesn't need to sink. That if we fix up our planet now and we do what we're supposed to do and get to the point that we're not suffering anymore and we're not broke and evil is not running free, if we can clean that up now, we can save Atlantis from ever having sunk. And in their time, now they get to go through something, and there's going to be this merging of reality between their timeline and ours, and we both end up in the same present after this happens. And the sun goes poof. When the sun does a solar flash, it's like all of time is rebooted. And all these ancient prophecies give you variations of this. All of these cycles that we see, it's not like there's 12 of them that's 2,160 years each. There's one of them. And it's one hero, and it's one perfected soul that we're creating as we evolve together as a planet. We're becoming one consciousness. The planet itself is the sum total of the humans on it. And that's why if you want to love the earth, you have to love its people. That was one of Michael's messages to me when I was feeling really down and being trolled so much. It was around 2008 or something, and I'm taking a hike. I got this very strong message that comes in, says, if you want to love the earth, you must love its people. And I really, really remember that. It was very powerful. And it changed my whole outlook. And I said, you know what, even if everybody's going to treat me like crap, I'm still going to be a good person. I'm going to do what I need to do. And in this case, the hero's journey perfects each of us at the same time. The tree's fruit ripens together. That's the basis of the 25,000-year cycle. It all coalesces into some kind of geometric unity in the solar system. We drift into this place where all of these different geometric points of, like, there's a pentagon, there's a square, there's a triangle, all the different geometries have corners that all overlap in this one area of space, and that's why our solar system is heating up. That's why the planets are getting so dramatically brighter and hotter and more magnetic, because it's building up to some type of solar energy release, which again, that's what the Mayan calendar was built to track. They didn't write a line note in there that said, oh, by the way, guys, when you find this calendar, it's a solar flash at the end. Woohoo! No, they left it all in symbolic language. Most of these mythologies, Santillan and Van de Schend, again, these two historians, said that the mythologies are all precession. All the 35 different ancient cultures around the world with these mythologies that Joseph Campbell's looking at, these historians go in there, Santillan and Van de Schend, and they say, that's all talking about the same thing, which is a 25,000-year cycle in the Earth's axis. 35 different ancient mythologies all talk about this cycle in the Earth's axis. What the hell for? Well, the stories tell us the sun's going to give off this flash of energy. Some of the stories end with a metaphor of that. And again, Lonnie Thompson shows, oh yeah, well, 5,200 years ago, something really bad happened, and it looks like it could happen again. So just panic at your leisure, you guys in your pink suits there at the AGU meeting in San Francisco. Panic as much as you want. I don't care. It's okay. So the hero's journey, again, breaks down into 3 acts or 4 sections. I'm having fun, folks. And that 4-section thing is actually etched into the geometry of space and time along the equator of the sphere. So this Christ consciousness in the law of one is called the Logos, and each geometry that we see is a projection of the one infinite creator, or the Logos. Each geometry tells us the same story. The story it's telling us is the hero's journey, story of Christ. You start with separation. You want something really bad, but you can't get it. You go through initiation, and then you have a return, which means that you've now healed and you've been victorious in your quest. You get to return to ordinary life. newly transformed. So separation, initiation, return, that's a very important one that whole books have been written about. In storytelling, it's setup, conflict, and resolution. You have to set up a story between a hero and a villain. The hero and the villain have to come into conflict, and then the hero has to win, and that's resolution. The hero always wins. That's the formula. If you don't follow the formula, you have a dark movie. You can try it, but it won't sell very well. So Hollywood always uses the formula because we want this story to be told a certain way. We want the hero to appear to be dead on page 85. We want him to get up from the dead like Neo did, causing me to cry, on page 90. It's setup, conflict, and resolution. It's also called beginning, middle, and ending. Okay? And like I said, the hero has to appear dead for 5 pages of the screenplay. And that's typically called the dark night of the soul. But immediately after the dark night of the soul, which is Good Friday, it's not really good, but ultimately it will be, it leads to victory, which is on Easter Sunday, or Palm Sunday, because he shows you his palms. I think that's why they called it that. So again, the dark night of the soul leads to victory. This is the whole point, folks. We're obviously in the global dark night of the soul part of the cycle, because we know what the cycle is. We've analyzed it in all different KHPC, Professor Fomenko shows it in all different parts of history. We know it's there. And we know that there's this part of the story where the hero appears to be defeated and the villain has totally won, and that's the dark night of the soul. And I don't know when we really hit that point, but we're still in it right now. I think in global terms, we're starting to climb out from the bottom. But like in suicide literature, for example, they say, people don't do it when they're at the bottom. They do it when they're getting better, and then they can't handle any more shocks that remind them of what the bottom was like. That's a very, very important point I learned in the Oasis Crisis Hotline I interned at for 2 years in college. Okay, I did this for 2 years. We learned that people do not have a collapse at the bottom. They get through the bottom, they started to heal their lives, and if they kept on going, they would be fine. And that's when they give up, is when they get one new shock after they've already hit the bottom, but they're climbing their way out. I look at us right now as climbing our way out, but we certainly haven't gotten to the big event yet. So the big event may be somehow related to August 8th and its solar eclipse, and there's all this content that people are doing on that. I don't even really need to cover it right now because it's so widely being covered. I just have some other things to say. So again, the dark night of the soul leads to this victory. It's written into the cosmic background of space and time itself, okay? We are living through a dream landscape, which I talked about in other shows. Our lives are symbolic representations of the things we need to learn. And so if we're being hurt on a global level by an evil force, it's a character sketch of the human psyche. If you don't like that these people are acting like this, then you rise up as the hero. You decide you want to do something different about it with yourself, with your own life. And so as you learn, wow, you know what? It's not as fun to live on Earth as I thought. There's some really bad people doing some bad stuff. I need to get in there. I need to be aware of this. I need to talk about it. I can't hide from it. I'm not going to bury my head in the sand. I need to look at the truth. I need to embrace the truth. So there is a hero's journey that's been available to us for a long time, and I jumped on it back in '96. I'm on Richard's forum, and there's certain people that are attacking me really badly, and they just never allow any of these things to be true, and if you win the argument, they don't even care. And I just decided to ignore them and keep on going. But the point is, there is a villain that is really, really bad, that is not the villain that you're ever going to hear about on TV. It's not the villain that you're ever going to hear about in the news. They might kind of allude to it. They might paint around the edges of it. But the real villain, if you want to get onto the main hero's journey timeline, the real villain will not be televised. They're not going to tell you about this. They're not going to give you the straight answer. They're not going to tell you the story. They're not going to let you know what's really going on. It's all about deception. It's about lying. And whatever happened on Watergate, now we're at like times 1,000. It's just that bad. It's a whole weird structure of people, apparently up to 4 million of them in America alone, maybe more, and they're working in secret without telling us what they're doing, and they're actually trying to do some really bad things. That's the real hero's journey timeline that you can jump onto when you're just able to psychologically hold space for the idea that there could be something hiding behind and unifying the worlds of media, finance, agriculture, corporations, military. What was Eisenhower warning about? He said the military-industrial complex. But what's interesting is that since that time, members of the military apparently have taken responsibility to try to push back in what they call the plan. And this is something I've been reporting on for a long time. When I met Pete Peterson in 2009, I was getting these briefings about an organized, very, very significant resistance, because the alliance, as I like to call them, this secret group within the military, they have incredible technology. I mean, it's beyond anything you can imagine. And just even what they can do for surveillance. Like, for an example, you think you're safe because you're inside a house? No. As you're talking, even if you don't have any devices in the house, the windows on the outside are vibrating. And they can shine a laser onto the window and they can hear you by translating the fluctuations in the laser light back into audio frequencies. They invented that. They invented it where they can shine an invisible laser into the water, the glass of water that you have. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this. I'm just thinking about it now like, oh shit, am I giving some? I hope not. But anyway, they can shine an invisible laser into the water in your glass on the table, and they can hear your conversation by listening to it off the surface of the water. They can do it just about, and there's so many other things like that. So this organized resistance is real, and when you get into the hero's journey, when you understand the story I keep telling people, now you're like, wait a minute, what if they've been planning to defeat, what if the alliance has been planning to defeat these guys ever since, at least in America, the late 1940s, early 1950s. And we've never really seen anything happen out in the open. It's always behind the scenes. It's always hidden, occult. The word occult means hidden. And that's so frustrating. You know, like, when are we ever going to learn the truth? But again, this is what I believe is going to become the main storyline for the whole planet. That there was this villain that most of us didn't know about, and there was this hero that most of us didn't know about as well. And we have this realization that, wow, wait a minute, the villain is real. Like, wow, and Neo says, oh my God, the Matrix is real. The villain is real. Holy crap, that's true. But the hero is real? I didn't even hear about this. Well, they've had to disguise what they're doing. They can't tell you directly. And now we're getting to the point where apparently there's going to be messaging coming through our phones. Maybe we're not going to have any access to the internet during this time, but there's going to be these videos playing, perhaps. Maybe they'll do it some other way. I don't know. And the videos may be incredibly shocking and feature footage from trials that may have already happened that we don't know about. And there may be some very significant names that you will be shocked as hell when you see this, of who is on trial and what the heck they were confronted with and what they admit to under oath on trial. Okay, this is actually real. And I was getting briefings about it all the way back in 2009, and I'd get an hour of information per phone call sometimes, asking questions, trying to find out, okay, is this real? And then I found out, yeah, these are the guys who have the deep underground military bases. These are the guys who have the UFOs that they reverse engineered. They have free energy devices. They have time viewing devices. They can look through time, chronovisor type of stuff. They have all this weird ET-derived technology that they brought in. And then right after Eisenhower, it became classified, multiple levels above the President of the United States. The cosmic top secret clearance is 35 levels of need to know above the President of the United States. That means if you're Bill Clinton, you're not going to hear about it. If you're Barack Obama, you're not going to hear about it. Donald Trump probably wouldn't have heard about it. George W. Bush, not going to hear about it. There's a whole world that nobody even knows about unless you get up to level 35, cosmic, 35 above the president. They never tell the President of the United States anything about any of this stuff that's going on. They don't tell them that there's human good ETs. They don't tell them that there's reptilian, insectoid, and gray bad ETs. They don't tell them anything about all these different 57 varieties of species of humans that have been crashing their ships on Earth. They're not going to tell you anything. But they have all this crazy technology. They can look through time. They've got probably hundreds of different varieties of ET flying saucers that they can pick apart and play with. And part of the story is that folks in the classified projects, including Pete Peterson, were building very exotic advanced technologies out of these things that were crashed here, these UFOs, and they're never going to tell you anything about what they did. And these projects have very good money, extraordinary budgets. As I said last time, they use things like the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Apollo projects, the nuclear arms race, certain fighter jet programs were used as funnels for black money. And so they don't cost as much as they say. It didn't cost as much to go to the moon as we were told. And the rest of the money was doing all this other stuff to create a line of defense for our planet against a very real extraterrestrial threat that they did not want to tell us about in the 1960s for fear of a War of the Worlds style panic. They do not want the panic incident to happen, folks. So this is all part of the deep state too, but now it turns out that as you flesh out the character of the hero, that from this mold of the deep state comes heroic people who have this weird technology, but they've been using it to save our planet from the bad guys. They are the good guys. They are the ones who are making sure that everything's going to be okay. And I have been following what they're doing all along. I was getting weird briefings on it since 2009. I kept finding evidence out in the public eye that I would write about in my articles. I had new insiders keep coming forward, giving me new briefings about this stuff. And finally, eventually, by 2017, the posts started to happen in October. And they were very amazing. And it really changed everything about my life because now all of a sudden they're just dumping extraordinary amounts of data. And you really kind of had to follow it while it was going. So this is the hero now showing up in a form that is veiled. You haven't seen the hero unveiled yet. You haven't seen the Alliance say, okay, everybody, here we are. This is what we were doing. That's going to happen. Hasn't happened yet. But again, one of the terms for this group that the Alliance grew out of is Majestic, because the original project was called Majestic 12. The first 12 guys who learned about the UFOs were Majestic 12. And I read so many UFO books on Majestic 12, I got tired of hearing about these guys. Like Roscoe Hillenkoetter, that's one of them. God, how many frickin' times am I going to read the name Roscoe Hillenkoetter? How many frickin' times am I going to read about the MJ12 frickin' documents? When I was reading books in the late 90s out of the library, they all kind of kept saying the same stuff. And UFO books didn't really have a lot of depth. And so a number of different authors would all cover the same data. And it got very frustrating because I'd be wanting to read a new book, but then I'd be encountering the same data. And this Majestic 12 stuff, man, so many UFO books had it in there. It was just incredibly frustrating. I have to say that. So at this point, I realized there is something going on. They've been covering it up. And then when I got to these deeper insiders, I find out, yeah, there's this whole world that's 35 levels above Obama or Trump or Clinton or anybody. And at that level, they're interacting directly with extraterrestrials, and they're not going to let you in. You can't show up and do anything about it. Richard Dolan brought out a whistleblower who was tasked by Eisenhower, I think it was Eisenhower or Truman, one of the two, might have been Truman, to invade Area 51. And they basically got turned around at gunpoint and told to leave, and you're not allowed in here. But we will tell you that there's some stuff here. Go back and tell him he doesn't have a need to know. Well, he's the president. We don't care. That's really what happened. So within that group of we're 35 levels above the president, we're not going to tell you, there's people using technology that's become a part of their daily lives that you've never seen or heard of. And they have an enormous amount of it. They have free energy. We don't need to pay for electricity. You can have this little box. You buy it for $5,000. You keep it in your house, and your house just runs forever, and you never pay an energy bill again. They have anti-gravity. There's many, many craft that can levitate themselves, and they don't need any special equipment. It's actually pretty easy to build this, and Salvatore Pais put out the patents on behalf of the U.S. Navy. levitation, anti-gravity patents. That's one of the things we're going to be talking about next month at this conference, the Disclosure Summit. So the hero is very interesting because the hero in this storyline has all this weird technology, time viewing technology, and so they have this stuff and they've spent their whole lives since they got in studying this and being in these rooms and looking at these weird devices that you've never seen before. And they have free energy, so they don't need to pay for energy. They have hover cars. They have weird holographic projection technology. They have instant healing technology. That's the medbed thing. Part of what we found on these UFOs was technology where you could have your head chopped off and they can literally grow, your body will grow a new head, or they can just put the head and the body together and it'll just kind of seal up where the wound was. So you could have your head chopped off, put the head back onto the body, or even if somebody gets all burned up and there's just a piece left, you can regrow their whole body out of the one piece with this technology. That's literally what it is. Even if you just get a piece of their leg, that's enough. This is how bizarre it is to imagine somebody living in the world where they have access to this stuff. And so with Stavati Aerospace, my goal has been that I want to participate in getting this technology out to the planet. So that's why I put all my money into this. I want you to have free energy. I want you to have anti-gravity. I want you to have the medbed. And we hopefully will be able to get all of these things going. We are already making really great progress, and I'm a lot less worried about the company. We have just like probably 3 really big things going on right now that are really cool. But I've never gotten any type of ability to see anything. I've never been taken to a base. I've never been taken underground. I've never seen anything. Never in the sky, never in front of me. I've just had certain insiders who are my friends who told me things off the record that they shouldn't have been saying, and that's how I learned all this. And most of them got in trouble for telling me this stuff. So it does make me uncomfortable still sometimes to talk about this, but as I've said in previous shows, it looks like we are now getting close to some type of congressional disclosure event. They're getting ready to do a whole story for us in Congress. It's very, very interesting. So we are now in this very fascinating war that nobody really knows what it is because you don't know what the alliance is. They only give you little tidbits and these little comms and little clues that they send out. And you don't really know what the enemy is, the dark side, because they communicate with symbolism. And they keep showing you this upsetting symbolism, and they keep doing weird stuff. Like at the Grammys, they keep showing you the devils and the horns and the blood and the fire and all this stuff. Why do they keep talking about this so much? Who the hell is the creative director that thinks that Satan is the best theme they can have for every single show they do every single year? Wouldn't somebody get like, oh, well, let's do like the happiness show. You know, we don't need to do the Satan this year. Let's just pump the brakes on Satan. Let's do like the ponies and happiness show. We're going to have little girls riding ponies. There's nothing bad about it. You know, they're going to have, I don't know. It's just going to be this whole different thing. We don't need to do Satan this year. No. They do it every freaking year, man. And you didn't think that mattered, did you? Maybe you did. Well, it turns out it does. It's something they're doing. So that both sides are somewhat visible, but still mostly cloaked from us. And as I said before, this is actually the way it is in every cycle of history. Even if back in Scipio Africanus' time, I'm sure there was some type of dark elite that nobody knew about, and they're doing stuff that nobody knew about. And we know about these things, actually. We know that they captured Carthage and they brought in Baal and Moloch, these 2 gods, and they made that a part of their secret tradition. So there's always been this stuff that's secret. That's part of what the cycle's about. There's a secret negative side that's demonic, and there's a secret positive side that's angelic. And they both work together. I still got 5,000 people watching after 2 hours. Thank you guys. Hang in there. We're getting to some big stuff here, okay? Don't hang up. You really don't want to leave the show yet. So I was talking about the geometry, that the dream landscape of the hero's journey is inside it. The arrow of time wraps around it. And each time we make a cycle across the geometry, we're telling ourselves the same story. So again, we've got these 5 Platonic solids: dodecahedron, tetrahedron, octahedron, icosahedron, and cube. They're associated with the elements. You got earth, air, fire, water, and ether. Here's another just simple wireframe diagram of each one of them. And again, this is the pattern of the way that photons run. There's this fluid throughout the whole universe. Tesla was onto this. Some people called it the ether, this idea that there's a fluid-like background in the universe. Isn't that weird? Well, yeah, and when it vibrates, it creates these geometries. And so that's where atoms and molecules come from. All we are ultimately made of is these photonic geometric vibrations. And as I've said before, Professor Henry Markram found that when we think in our minds, these same geometric patterns are appearing in the actual groups of neurons that fire off simultaneously, millions of them per second all over our brain. It's really, really weird that this is the shape of consciousness. This is the shape of thought. And the geometries, as I said before, they all fit together like this. Now, I want to deviate into a totally new direction here, which is why in the heck did they make these bronze dodecahedrons in the Roman culture? So let me read this to you. The Roman dodecahedron is a small hollow object made of bronze, or more rarely stone, the geometric shape of 12 flat faces. Each face is a pentagon, 5-sided. Roman dodecahedra are also embellished with a series of knobs, isn't that weird, on each corner point of the pentagons. The pentagon faces in most cases contain circular holes in them. More than 200 years after they first started getting dug up out of the ground, researchers are no closer to understanding the origin of this mysterious object or why did they build it? What is its function? Roman dodecahedron, I'm going to show you what this looks like. I know you're waiting for it. Just hang in there, okay? Just wait. Roman dodecahedra date from the 2nd or 3rd century AD and typically range from smaller sizes of 4 centimeters wide to 11 centimeters or 1.5 to 4.3 inches in size. So the biggest ones that you're going to see are going to be about like this big. You can hold, so all of these can be held perfectly within adult human hands. The highest that they get, again, pay attention to this, the widest they get is 4.33 inches. So you could easily hold one of these in your hands. To date, more than 100 of these weird Roman dodecahedrons, these are Roman settlers, they colonized Great Britain, Belgium, Germany, France, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Austria, Switzerland, and Hungary. They found over 100, and those are just the ones they were able to dig up. So the Romans had something that we didn't know about, folks. They were carrying these things around, and we don't even know why they were doing it or what they could have been for. But there was over 100 of them they dug up, and so this is what they actually look like. Now, this is a little guy. Again, it might be 1.5 inches wide. It might be 4 inches, 4.5 inches wide. That's about the range. Here's some more examples of these, and again, they're perfectly handheld. And then we have some more examples. So, I finally figured out what I think is going on here, and I believe that when we go through the first wave of Ascension, it would be a really good idea to have some of these things. To have a metal, I'm not even making them or selling them, but I'm just telling you, they were made out of bronze. They could be made out of silver. If you want to do a really nice one, it could be made out of gold. But I believe that people were holding these, let's go to one. People were holding these in their hands, and once we go through this first wave of Ascension, which is apparently going to happen by next year, you will be able to use this device to funnel energy into plasma spheres. The plasma sphere forms in the center of the device, and then it shoots out through one of the holes, and so this actually could become something equivalent to a self-defense weapon. And it is interesting that when you look at them, one of the theories is, it looks as if they have a sighting kind of thing. It's like you can tell how far away something is. That could be because people use it to target an area where they want to shoot their energy. You get the distance right, you dial it in, you have the right face of the whatever, however far away it is, you're going to use a different hole. You hold it differently in your hands. You send your energy into this thing, and the metal, just like in a pyramid, it actually conducts your spiritual energy and forms it into a sphere, and then you can push the sphere out in a line through the hole. And so this is an example of one that looks like they only did half of it, and maybe Again, that's because in this case, it's just like a big flash that goes straight out through the front. If you look at the top left image and you're holding it like that, okay, you could blast the image, you could blast the energy right out through the front. So again, people don't really know what the heck was this used for? Why were they carrying this around? Why would people travel all this way from Rome up to like Germany or England and carry this the whole way with them? This 4.5 inch wide bronze sculpture? Why would they care? And isn't it weird that this sculpture is now associated with all this cool physics about the solar system and the spacing of the planets and the thoughts that are inside your mind? Well, yeah, I believe that what we're looking at here is a waveguide for your own psychic energy to help you make plasma spheres and plasma lasers, as I was saying right here. So each one of these, that may be their function. And my point is, once we go through this solar system change, we will have conscious access to spiritual energy, and we can then use it in greater amounts. So now I want to get back into this story of the hero's journey, because we are on Easter, and I want to get through the show pretty fast here. So we're going to go through this part pretty quickly now, but you've heard a lot of this already. There's story points appearing at certain geometric locations on this sphere, which we can then flatten out into a circle. So Joseph Campbell, again, was the scholar who discovered all this really interesting stuff in his book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, that there's all these different cultures that have the same mythologies where there's a hero's journey storyline. And there's a flawed hero that goes up against a villain. He's dead for some point. He resurrects. He defeats the villain. He returns to his people, and he transforms the world. It's the same freaking story. So again, this is a way to look at the story, Joseph Campbell's version of it, flattened out on a graph from Christopher Vogler, who wrote his own book called The Writer's Journey. It's a very fascinating book. So we're going to read the italicized things above. So again, you see Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. This is the 3-act story structure of setup, initiation, and resolution, or it's also, you know, beginning, middle, and ending. So Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and what we're seeing here is ordinary world, special world, ordinary world above those words. This is because in the mythological tradition, when you go into the Act 2, you're now in the magical world. And that's a different place where magical things happen that normally wouldn't occur. Very fascinating. So you see ordinary world. Above Act 1, it says ordinary world, call to adventure, refusal, meeting your mentor, crossing the threshold. Then once you're in the magical kingdom, you have tests, allies, and enemies. You approach the innermost cave. You have an ordeal, and it has to be exactly at the midpoint. So in screenwriting, this is called the false up or the false down, and it happens exactly at the middle. The hero either appears to have won or appears to have lost. That's exactly at the point they call ordeal, or on the bottom it says big change. Then you have reward, seizing the sword, the road back, resurrection, that's Easter, and then return with the elixir. Now sometimes resurrection is put into Act 3, but again, it can happen right on page 90 as you enter Act 3 in a lot of these screenplays. So now I want you to look at this as if this is some type of super galactic structure that you're going to keep going through this pattern of events. And then you got to take the line that it's drawn on, and you got to connect the beginning to the end and make it into a wheel. And this is the wheel of karma. And a lot of people have done this. So this is a diagram of, okay, in this case it's clockwise, the hero's journey. He goes from the known world to the magical or the unknown world, call to adventure, supernatural aid, threshold guardians, mentor, helper, revelation, transfer. We can barely read it right now. You can wait for that light to come in. Transformation, atonement, and return. So here's another one that's easier to see. Abyss, death, and rebirth. Well, guess what? That's where we are right now. We're at the bottom, and we're going to dig our way out. Revelation, again, is the Easter theme. So again, what I'm trying to tell you is that these are geometric locations along the center of a sphere, along the equator. And when you're on a planet and you're orbiting through this, as you hit these areas, you have to experience these things, or at least within your own country. different countries sometimes are affected by different cycles. And that was one of the things I found in my book. So again, to make this into a three-dimensional screenplay, you got Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. In this case, it's counterclockwise, which is very confusing, but a lot of these diagrams are. Ordinary world, call to adventure, that's Act 1. Now you're going from 12 o'clock to 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Meeting with the mentor, first threshold, test out, okay, same thing. And then here it is again, another example of it. And this is just sort of like our own psychological curve where we go from grief back to order. And we have a breakthrough after hitting the dark night of the soul, which here is called the void. So you could pause that and look at that if you want to. This is the most complete diagram of the 17 stages that I've ever seen. It's hard to read, so I'm going to zoom in on it. You have the call to adventure, you refuse the call, supernatural beings show up to get you to want to do it. You finally enter the magical world that they teach you how to enter. And then you're in the belly of the whale, the final separation from your known world. This is like where the hero gets literally trapped inside the whale. Something really bad happens. But now the world inside the whale's stomach is a magical world. You're not in the regular world anymore. Inside the whale, you're in this whole other place. And that's the second act. So you get swallowed, or something really bad happens to you. Then you start going, and it could be a lot of things. It's just an archetypal name, okay? Then you have the road of trials, a series of tests, tasks, or ordeals you have to undergo, and you often fail in one or more of these tests, which often occur in threes. There is a meeting with the goddess where you experience a love that has power and significance of the all-powerful, all-encompassing, unconditional love that a fortunate infant may experience with his or her mother. Temptation, material temptations may lead you to abandon or stray from your quest. Atonement with the Father. This is actually now one of the really cool things that Joseph Campbell had, that the villain is the father. And so George Lucas goes, well, cool, we'll call him Darth Vader, Dark Father, and he's the villain. And so the whole movie Star Wars was written based off of this stuff. So you have to actually atone with the Father in these myths. You don't just kill him, right? It's not like that's what's happening. And what happened in Empire Strikes Back? Luke atones with his father, right? Or maybe it was Return of the Jedi, actually. I think it is, yeah, because it's the Emperor. The Emperor became kind of like the father figure in that sense. But again, atonement with the Father, you must confront and be initiated by whatever holds the ultimate power in your life. In many myths and stories, it's the father or a father figure who has the power over your life and death, and this is the center point of your journey. And then apostasis, when someone dies a physical death or dies to the self to live in spirit, you move beyond these opposites to a state of divine knowledge, love, compassion, and bliss. Then the ultimate boon is the achievement of the goal of your quest, what the person on the journey is wanting. All of these previous steps serve to prepare and purify you for this step. So this is the global ascension. This is the first wave. Apostasis, the ultimate boon. All of this stuff is talking about what happens once we confront, defeat, and atone with the Father. All those three things happen. You confront him, you defeat him, and you atone. Okay, that's all part of the storyline. So then you got the ultimate boon. It's getting very, very spiritual now. And then you have the refusal of the return. Having found bliss and enlightenment in this parallel reality, the hero may not want to return to his ordinary world. Magic flight. Sometimes the hero has to escape the magical world with the boon. This can be just as adventurous and dangerous returning from the adventure. And this is also, well, we'll get to that in a second. Then we have rescue from without. Oftentimes the hero needs a powerful guide to bring them back to everyday life if they've been wounded or weakened. Crossing the threshold of return, retaining the wisdom that you gained on the quest, integrating the wisdom into your human life, and sharing it with the rest of the world. And also in the magic flight section, let's just go back to that for a second. If you've seen the movie Alien, a lot of the screenwriting books love that movie, and they talk about it over and over again. Sigourney Weaver plays the lead female character, and after she thought she had defeated the alien, when the movie looks like it's over, there's what they call the alien in the airlock. And this is where, in the phase called magic flight, where it says it might be just as dangerous to return from the journey as it was to go on, that's because you find the alien in the airlock. Something bad happens to you on the way out. You've already learned what you needed to learn. You're digging out from the bottom, just like, again, the literature that I learned about in the hotline that I used to work for. It's not at the bottom that people have the crisis. It's when they're digging out from the bottom and then they hit that alien in the airlock. And they're on the way out, but they're on the way out of the magical world. They've gotten what they needed, but you get another level of resistance. And it's very annoying when that happens. And so we've had tons of these kind of things now. So then you cross the return threshold. You become the master of two worlds, achieving a balance between material and spiritual, your inner and outer world, and then the freedom to live. Mastery leads to freedom from the fear of death, which in turn is the freedom to live. This is sometimes referred to as living in the moment, which is what all meditation masters want you to do. You're neither anticipating the future nor regretting your past. So we now on Earth are reaching the Easter point. But in order to know what's going on, we have to understand the problem if we're ever going to hope to solve this. And as I said, neither the hero nor the villain is visible to us. This is the weird global hero's journey storyline that we're on. Most people don't know the story. You can't tell them the story. They're going to laugh at you. They're going to ridicule you. They're going to assault your character. They're going to tell you, I don't believe you. I don't believe any of this stuff. They're going to insult you because they don't want to believe there's this organized negative group on Earth, nor do they want to believe, if you could even get them that far, that the Alliance exists, that there's people who actually have all this great UFO technology, 35 levels above the president. They're not going to tell you what it is, but they decided, let's use it for the good. So we do have to understand the problem, and that means we need to understand the so-called DS, as you've heard me use those initials. That's the best way to say it. This was a major disclosure from Kevin Shipp in 2017, and he's a high-ranking agent who blew the whistle. And I also opened up the movie Moment of Truth with him, a very powerful speech that he gives. You can see here he is on Fox News, and he dropped some explosive stuff at this point. Again, this was in 2017, right before, a month before the Post started. And I think this was all part of the same initiative. A CIA whistleblower, Kevin Shipp, has emerged from the wolf's den to expose the DS and the shadow, which he calls two entirely separate entities. We're not really going to get into that. I don't know if we can quite do that, but okay, maybe. The shadow controls the DS and manipulates our government behind the scenes, he warned at a recent talk at Geoengineering. The top of the shadow is the ba-ba-ba and the ba-ba-ba, he said. And again, what's interesting here is these are the two agencies at the top, but it's in shadow. It's not actually negative. And it turns out that the N1 that we were just talking about, in the posts, they say that this is being used for the good. So you have two different groups that both have mass surveillance technology, and they're both using it to try to reach their goals at the same time. That's part of the story. It's one way you can look at it. Shipp expressed that the blankety was controlled through the CFR with no congressional approval, and historically the CFR is also tied into the media. He elaborated that the blankety was the central node of the shadow and controlled all of the other 16 agencies despite the existence of the DNI. That may have been what it was before, but as we said in maybe the second to last show, I showed you some slides from Shadow of Ezra, which is a new insider source that seems to be where all of the main intel is now gone and where they're dropping it. No, it's not like they're all being controlled. There's been changes at the top, and it's only these main three organizations now, the one that starts with the FB, the one that starts with CI, and then this, DO would be another one, right? And then the J at the end. So they were talking about those. So this is not true anymore, but it was true back then, which was really scary. But again, there's been this weird, quiet revolution that's gone on that we didn't hear anything about it until right near the end. But that's what he was saying at this time in 2017. The agency also controls defense and intelligence contractors. It can manipulate the president and his political decisions. It has the power to start wars, torture, initiate coups, commit FF attacks, etc. According to Shipp, the DS is comprised of the MIC, intelligence contractors, defense contractors, MIC lobbyists, Wall Street offshore accounts, the Fed, IMF, World Bank, Treasury, foreign lobbyists, and central banks. Oh, man. In the shocking, explosive presentation, he went on to express there are over 10,000 secret sites in the U.S. formed after 9/11. Wow. I wonder if that was used in 2020. I'm just putting it out there. There are 1,291 secret government agencies. What? 1,931 large private corporations and over 4.8 million Americans with a security clearance. Also, 854,000 who have top secret clearance, explaining they signed their lives away and are bound by an agreement. Pause a second to just kind of take that in. There's 1,291 secret government agencies? Holy crap. There's almost 1 million people who have top secret clearance, and they can't say anything about what they're doing. They can't say anything about what they're doing. Oh, almost 1 million people. This is just outrageous, okay? So as we're starting to set up the villain, this guy's talk in 2017 gives you a really nice overview of the scope and the depth of the problem. It's penetrated through all these different things by interlocking directorates where the same people are on the board of directors of these different companies, and they control media, they control finance, they control big sports, they control big agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. And it's scary. So now we want to talk about the shadow posts. These are the main comms from the Alliance that I believe has been happening since maybe 2 years ago now. They stopped posting on the other place they were posting before, which are called, again, the posts, and now they're doing this. And I'm very convinced that this is authentic. They've validated themselves so many times, and I really encourage you to take this very seriously, and they're now getting like 250,000 views on a lot of their posts lately, so this is very fascinating. What this represents is the outcropping of an organized resistance to the deep state that's been ongoing since the 1950s. We had Gordon Neville, a Camelot whistleblower, who reported on this in December 2006, and this is his picture. And this was the original post when it first came up, okay? And you can still click on this link. It still works. You have to go through some virus warnings, but it's there. And he said there was a German SS officer by the name of Galen. If you ever watched my movie, this is right at the beginning, okay? The very first thing I show you is this at the beginning, a Moment of Truth. And I highly recommend you go find Moment of Truth and watch it. Galen had a continuing organization that continued on past World War II, substantially involved in lots of nasty stuff, and still is today. And she says, are they set up in this country? And he says, they're set up all over the world, but they mostly answer, if not to the I, ... That's the only place I know that they answer to anybody. Most people all answer to the I ... if there's any power in any country. So yeah, I don't want to be ridiculed for using this word, because here's a high-level insider who's using that word, and he says that's what everybody replies to. That's what it's actually called. That's what they want to be called, okay? The I ... And he's coming right out and telling you, wait a minute, there's a name for the control system that integrates all the big finance and big tech and big agriculture and big media and big pharma, and all these things are part of this one thing that has this strange Italian name that has to do with brightness and illumination? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, folks. This is what he disclosed in 2006. That is what the DS is, okay? So then she asks him, what about Majestic? Do they get along with the I ... And he says, according to my information, Majestic and the I are not seeing eye to eye over the idea of triaging the population in order to bring it down to a workable level where it's safe to have life. And as he goes on, you find out Majestic is the one saying, no, we don't want to toast a whole bunch of people. And they were the ones saying, yeah, we do want to do this. We want to bring it down. And they're calling it triage, right? Well, triage is what you do when you're in a crisis, when you got to clean up big bad crisis, okay? He says we're approaching a very high number, around 7 billion, and they would like to triage a bunch. And Majestic, which is mostly U.S. military people and some other foreigners, they don't want to see that. Thank God. Okay, that's good. That sounds really good. Let's hope that's true. They're not in favor of mass blankety blank by blankety blank and stuff like that. Can you even believe what you're seeing here? He actually said this. This is what they were planning on doing when he said triage, and this was in 2006. And remember, it's not just viruses, it's the alleged treatment for the virus. Is that treatment safe or not? Well, maybe a lot of people are now saying that it isn't, and maybe that's becoming a really big deal. Maybe they didn't want it to be safe, but they have to be careful, so it's not instantly effective for everybody. It's only, something that's going to take a long time, and you got to get a whole bunch of them for it to add up. That might have been the plan. They didn't expect that they were going to get any resistance. They thought everybody would have to take these, and perhaps each one is going to systematically weaken your health even more. That could be what it is. This is exactly what he was talking about, how they wanted to do it, what they wanted to do, and that they were going to use this technology, if you want to call it that, technology of germs and all this kind of stuff. So she says, this is a good side to Majestic 12. And he snarks, it's the only good side I know of. And she says, yeah, I know you're not really friendly with them. And he's a big, triple letter agency guy, the one that starts with C, the company as they call it. He says, yeah, I'm friendly with a couple members of Majestic, but I'm not friendly with their program to destabilize some of my businesses. So there's been this ongoing secret war between Majestic and the company in the secret world for a long time. And the posts that I'm talking about and the comms that I'm talking about are now emerging from this secret hero side of the war. It's in the military, it's in the intelligence community. You're not going to see it. They're not going to openly announce who they are. They have to communicate in symbolic coded languaging. Aren't you happy you watched this show? Isn't this freaking great? It's about to get a lot crazier. So if you have some children around, you may want to, have them go play with Legos or something. Because, all right, let's just say that. It's getting pretty close now. He said, they were very nasty last year and we almost ended up killing each other. And it didn't happen because of a safe house agreement that protected me and saved my life. So I'm very, very indebted to the blankety blank. Well, yeah, there you go. So now we got to talk about some stuff that nobody wants to learn about. And back in 2012, this was the story, okay? This guy, Jimmy, and his last name starts with an S. He's wearing these crazy glasses and he's all... It says the rotten culture at the heart of the BBC. That's October 5th, 2012. This was the day that all this stuff started to break out in the UK. Never really made it over here. But this guy was the head of the top music video television show that got people turned on to the Rolling Stones, got people turned on to the Beatles, got people turned on to every cool British rock band, you name it. They were on this one show. And the name of the show was Top of the Pops. And so this show featured Mick Jagger, featured Paul McCartney, featured John Lennon, featured Elvis. I mean, you name a name, and they were on that show. And who did they stand with? Who was the host of the show? There you go. That's the host of the show, okay? I don't even like to show this, but like if you could ever smell a photograph, I can smell this photo. I know exactly what it smells like, and I don't want to be around it, okay? So this was the host of the show. I'm not going to show you that again. It's a smellable photo, folks. It's really disgusting. I'm just putting that out there. So then this thing started around October 5th, 2012, and it was part of the Alliance's plan, I'm sure. And it led to the BBC director resigning on November the 10th. And it's called a bloodbath. Quits as in a sensation, Director General George Entwistle forced shoddy journalism. Oh my God, look at this. November 10th, here we go. The Director General of the BBC sensationally quit tonight in the aftermath of the scandalous Newsnight report, smearing senior Tory Lord McAlpine over false claims. George Entwistle announced his resignation 12 hours after he was humiliated in a BBC interview by John Humphreys over how he handled the issue. So the director of the frickin' BBC had to resign over this. That's how bad it was. In a dramatic statement at 9 p.m. last night, he resigned following pressure from senior government sources and within the BBC itself. So then these are some other links. They are in the worst crisis of 50 years over their cover-up of what was going on. That's the link. It still, I believe, works. Or you could look it up in archive.org. This is another one that I found on October 25th, a tsunami of filth that's done terrible damage to the BBC. This was all before he resigned. I'm just showing you the headlines right now. BBC is hopelessly in crisis. Police prepare an arrest strategy as the case grows. Wow. An arrest strategy. And that was in the New York Times. Isn't that interesting? And then we're going to read out of this one. The number of people who said they were assaulted by JS, one of this country's most popular TV hosts, expanded from 200 to 300 in just the last week. These are people coming forward. And other people may have acted with him, Scotland Yard officer heading the investigation said on Thursday. And then on January 13th, 2023, we find out, lo and behold, our miscreant friend here was part of this ring. It says it right here on the headline. This is from express.co.uk. And I found it on Google just today. Probably won't be there for long. But that he was part of this S ring, a secret S ring. It says JS beat and AR'd a person during a secret SR in a hospital. Okay? So here we go. This is the link. You can go find it for right now. I'm not saying it's going to stay there. The star wore a hooded robe and a mask as he hurt this person in a candlelit basement. He also chanted Hail S in Latin as other worshippers joined in and assaulted at the Stoke Mandeville Hospital in Buckinghamshire in a secret room that they didn't let anybody know about. That's where this was going on. And it's unbelievable. This actually came out. The attack happened in 1975, and it shines a sinister new light on the former DJ's 54-year reign of terror. He died in 84, October 2011. He's now the worst known offender after police revealed he preyed on 450 at least from this age range, starting all the way down there up to 47. She kept her torment hidden for nearly 20 years before finally opening up to this therapist, Valerie Sinison. Dr. Sinison told the Sunday Express she first spoke to the person in 1992. Quote, she had been a patient at Stoke Mandeville in 75 when he was visiting there regularly. This was one of the places he paid for to set it up. He had 26 of these different facilities. She recalled being led into a room that was filled with candles on the lowest level of the hospital, somewhere not regularly used by staff. Several adults were there, including this person who, like the others, was wearing a robe and a mask. There you go. She recognized him because of his distinctive voice and the fact that his blonde hair was protruding from the side. He was not the leader, but he was seen as important because of his fame. He's on this very huge television show. He is the director of rock and roll, really. Dr. Sinison, who directs the Clinic for Dissociative Studies in London, said, quote, now another victim came to me in 1993. She said she had been lended out as a supposedly consenting woman at a party in London at a house in 1980. The first part of the evening started off with a blankety-blank, everybody's doing their thing, but halfway through, some of the participants left. Uh-oh. Whoever sticks around, what's going to happen next? It's not going to be good. Along with other young women, the victim was shepherded to wait in another room before being brought back to find him in a master of ceremonies kind of role, within a group who were wearing robes and masks. She too heard Latin chanting and instantly recognized various regalia. Although she was a young adult who was above the age, she has suffered a history of abuse and was extremely vulnerable. Both of these victims contacted Dr. Sinison, who's president of the Institute of Psychotherapy and Disability, while she was involved in a Department of Health-funded study into abuse committed during religious ceremonies. She said both these witnesses did speak to police at the time, but they were vulnerable, and on encountering any surprise or shock, they did not dare to give the details, so the police took no action. She added he was still a huge celebrity in the early 90s, let's not forget. He had various television shows, and there was never any action taken against him or any of the others involved. Neither girl knew one another. They lived in different parts of the country. They contacted me a year apart, but their experiences are very similar. Whether he was a practicing S or merely enjoyed dressing up to scare his victims even more will perhaps never be known, but he left those two girls mentally scarred. Yeah, you got to be brave to take that leap and see the villain in the story, but this is a very dark villain. We're talking about the guy who's on television. He's leading everybody into what bands to like, and oh, here's the Beatles, here's the Rolling Stones, here's Mick Jagger singing Sympathy for the Devil. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guessed my name, right? Like, all right, maybe that's weirder than I thought it was back when it first came out. Just call me Lucifer, right? He says that in the song. It's like, whoa. So, okay. They're putting this stuff in their lyrics. One of the Rolling Stones albums is called Goat's Head Soup. They're on the show with this guy. And now we find out from two different independent whistleblowers who never spoke to each other that they both experienced being taken downstairs into this room, masks, robes, and candles, and chanting. And again, each hospital that he built, he had 26 of these, they all had one of these special rooms. So this is like really, really freaked out. And then it gets even freakier when you realize that they could be doing the same thing in schools to look for people they could hypnotize. Now this again, this is why I said now is the Tinker Toy time, okay? So go have your kids play with something, because this is really interesting. Some of the memories, well, let's put it a different way. I have dreams of being in my school and being woken up and then taken down the hall, and we open a door and we go down these stairs and we go into the basement, and things happen in the basement in my school. And then what I realized is that you could be drinking your milk like they have you do. I always would drink, I didn't want to drink the chocolate, so I drank the regular plain milk, and you're still basically a baby, right? In kindergarten, you're like 5 years old. So as soon as you drink milk, your body says, oh, I've been nourished, I need to go to sleep. And the best way to get a baby to stop crying is to nurse the baby, because there's these hormones in the milk that will make the baby fall asleep. Well, what if after you, and everybody, this all American public schools, they do this, right? This is scaring the crap out of you now, isn't it? So just bear with me. Everybody drinks their milk. Then what did they have you do? Do you remember? You would lay down on a little mat. They give you your own little mat. And this is about how, these are the clothes I was wearing right around this time, okay? I still have this. This is my little flannel pajamas. These are the pajamas I had an out-of-body experience in. This is the top, and this is the bottom. And when I floated out of my own body in these pajamas, this was the most profound experience I'd ever had in my entire life. It was when I was 5 years old, in kindergarten. I floated out of my own body, and I got scared as I started to feel like I was being taken somewhere, and I popped back into my body. And now later on, I've wondered, did I go into some type of UFO experience after the part where I freaked out, and I seemed to wake up in my body? Either way, I woke up in these pajamas, and I never wore them again. They became my sacred pajamas, okay? So I've never actually showed this before. There's a little guy playing football on here, and it's got red cuffs, and it's yellow. But I have this always in my sock drawer. Now I'm probably going to put it in the safe from now on, now that I've showed it. But yeah, I'm going to put this in the safe now. But up until now, I kept it in my sock drawer. My entire life, everywhere I went, kept it in the sock drawer. The reason I never washed these again, and the reason I never threw this away, is I said, how in the hell did I float out of my body in these pajamas? What is the magic secret about these pajamas that they can clone themselves, and that my body still wears them when I'm a ghost, but my body is also wearing them in bed? There's two pairs of pajamas. This really, really tripped me out. So again, I actually saved this. And then in the same year, 2 years later actually, I got this calendar from my parents. And this is another thing I didn't have the original, unfortunately. I lost it. But this was a Mickey Mouse calendar that has these various pictures in it. And when I was a kid, I was reading this book on ESP, and I was going through month by month, and I was writing down in the calendar the psychic experiences and synchronicities that were happening to me. I would write it down month by month on this calendar. So when I look at these pictures of like what I saw from when I was a kid in this calendar, it just blows me away so freaking much. And I was having weird psychic events that I documented in that calendar almost every day. And it was this out-of-body experience that was the incentive. I did this at 5. Nothing happened for 2 years. I got pissed off. and I read books on ESP to try to get it back so I could get another chance to float out of my body, because I kept having these dreams of benevolent, positive, angelic humans who, you know, turned into Obi-Wan Kenobi after Star Wars in 1977. And I would have these loving, long conversations with these beings, and I'd feel so wonderful. And it's only now that I'm doing this Michael prophecy stuff, as of starting in 2022, that Michael tells me, yeah, you know what, you had this parallel lifetime as a kid where UFO-based technology was used. So when you floated out of your body and you're wearing these silly pajamas, and here's the bottoms again, you know, look at how small they are now. That was my pants, okay? That's all I had. That was my height. I never threw them away. When I was getting taken out of my body like that, sometimes I was going somewhere, and then very bad things were happening. So again, if you're in kindergarten, you're lying there, and you drink milk, and then you take a nap, what if somebody then starts to say things? And if you are potentially hypnotizable, maybe you hear those things, and maybe you go with them somewhere else. And maybe you'll never remember a darn thing for the rest of your life. Well, guess what, folks? I have dreams suggesting that this happened to me. The story got even crazier by April 19th of 2013, where now his number went all the way up to 1,350. Think about how many days there are in the year. And think about how many different times, how many years are there in 1,350 days? First of all, it's like what? It's at least 4 years. So that would be like a different person every day for 4 years. Holy crap. I mean, look at that. And it, you know, so they're thinking, wow, I mean, that's just a staggering number. Okay. So it could be up to 1,350, the police officer who exposed him said today. Operation Y Tree, I'm not even going to say it out loud, which is looking into allegations of crimes against the former presenter, as well as a host of other celebrities, has recorded 450 people saying something happened to them. Holy crap. But former Metropolitan Police Commissioner Peter Spindler, who led the Y investigation until earlier this year, told an NSPCC conference that as well as those who came forward, there were probably double or treble the number who haven't. And here's another one. This was November 10th, and it says, the Director General of the BBC sensationally quit tonight in the aftermath of the scandalous report smearing senior Tory Lord McAlpine over these false claims. Right, of course. He announced his resignation 12 hours after he was humiliated in an interview by John Humphreys over how he handled it. In a dramatic statement at 9 p.m. last night, he resigned following pressure from senior government sources and within the BBC itself. In 2021, we learned that he was actually creepily licking the princess. It's so gross. He inserted himself into their marriage. He was able to hide his horrific predatory crimes during his lifetime by engaging in charity work and establishing relationships with high-profile figures. However, in Thursday's documentary, it was claimed that the princess recoiled from him while the prince was gullible and enjoyed having him around. Now, it's possible the prince didn't know anything about this other stuff. That is actually oftentimes how they do it. He's the guy that has all the access to the rock stars. You want to meet Paul McCartney, you want to meet John Lennon, you want to meet Elvis. Here's your guy. And what they will do is they will keep you in this trap where you don't know all the other stuff that's going on, but then they just bring you into something that's like a fun party. And that's all that you know. And maybe you have other stuff happening, but you might be under hypnosis and you might not even know that you're doing it. I'm honestly telling you, some of these people, even at the highest levels, they don't even know what the heck is going on because they have a split personality and they're not even aware of what's happening, okay? So this is something he even carried out on the princess, added Kay. He licked her hand and she recoiled. As she told me, it was very, very creepy. Yuck. But he was well established in government circles with the prime ministers of the day, and by being so established, he was untouchable. At the time, Chuck was gullible. I'm saying with hindsight he was gullible. At the time he was gullible, as was everyone else. Then we find out he had regular access to the palaces. He was in there regularly. Okay, this is April 8th. He had incredible access, appearing with them during numerous outings in 1983 when he, Charles, and Diana opened the new spinal injury center at Stoke Mandeville Hospital. Oh, nothing bad's ever going to happen at Stoke Mandeville Hospital. There's no secret room in the hospital that anybody could ever go into with candles or anything like that. In a memo he penned for the firm in 1989, the entertainer said he was in the palaces on a regular basis. Oh, man. It's not looking good. His claim was part of the handwritten 5-page manual titled Guideline for Members of the Royal Family and Their Staff. A new Netflix documentary, JS, A British Horror Story, explains how he sent his PR guide to Charles. And I'll bet you that's still up, so you could probably go watch that if you want to. I mean, it's horrible stuff. On a page of the document titled Personal Observations, he claimed he was well placed to comment on the family's public image due to his many visits to their royal residences. Then, as I said in previous shows, isn't it strange that on February 5th they had this comm come out about the king, or maybe he's not going to be king anymore, and they put this X across him. Now, it says proof of removement. You click on that, and it goes back to this from May 6th of last year, where it says it will be a very short reign. It's a very strange synchronicity that right before we did the last show, one of the members of my board, his daughter is in England, and she wanted to see King Charles, and she saw him from 5 feet away, and he was waving at her and smiling, and she was crying and jumping up and down and very, very happy. So I know he's alive. So that red X cannot mean that, because my own whistleblower firsthand saw him from 5 feet away. He was waving at her and he was smiling. So he is around. And remember, they said in some of the comms we talked about, the British royal family has ended and they are quitting. So it probably has something to do with what happened back in 2012 and 2013. I'm just going to lay that out there for you. So then, remember February 22nd that Scavino flagged post number 59, which had this hilarious bit from Chris Farley, who's one of my own main comic inspirations. And then it's 59 seconds long, and you got to go back to the posts and read that number. And this one really did add up. Remember, information is everything. The flow of information is no longer controlled by the media, but by you and others. Hence why we are dedicating critical time to distribute these crumbs, which can be filed in greater detail to paint the entire picture as more information is released, which I'm now starting to give you. This whole hero's journey thing between good and evil, and how bad the villain is, how scary the villain is. Why has POTUS dedicated so much time into labeling the media as fake news? And why is this relevant? We are fully prepared that all social media will be shut down to prevent the spread of this information. Whoa, that could be something we're getting ready to have. Sealed federal orders pre-submitted, which will be preventing and will be masked as in general, but it doesn't account for rogue agents and programmers. Dates and impending actions are deliberately provided for authenticity, Alice in Wonderland. And sure enough, after they had the post that Dan Scavino had telegraphed an AOL outage, then the next thing you know, there's this 8-hour internet blackout on February 22nd. And it really did happen. That was a fascinating proof. Then they posted this thing on February 25th about, it says, "Behold a pale horse, the name that sat upon him was death. One of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse." We found out that the pale horse represents the king, but it's never usually brought out alone. The king or the queen has to be on the horse. Then the very next day, they posted this. One of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and it's the head Rothschild guy. So, whoa. And this was like right when he disappeared. And they say he's no longer with us. Well, again, Charles is with us because I had a witness who was 5 feet away and he was waving at her. But when they're doing this parade with the horses and stuff, this totally suggests the British alliance, the alliance in Britain was involved in this somehow. And then they posted, you remember, the picture of the Fed, that it's all boarded up on the outside with all this wrapping material over it. It says they've been closed for about 3 years and they haven't printed any new currency. So something is going on that's very strange we don't know about because nobody told us this openly, right? This is not public. And then I got very excited on the 18th when they posted the climax scene from the movie V for Victory. And at the end, you have all the British Parliament, Big Ben, it's all going up in big bombs and holy crap. And everybody takes off this mask And it's this mask, the Guy Fawkes mask. Okay, so this is an article I wrote back in 2013, and it says, confirmed, U.S. military alliance is defeating the Federal Reserve. Dramatic new evidence reveals a secret alliance of U.S. military personnel are working to expose and defeat the Federal Reserve and the occult cabal of bankers and industrialists who run it. There you go. So this was one of the numbers of comms they were putting out. They had many, many comms. I've talked about them in previous articles, previous live streams. But now I want to share with you some new stuff, because one of the things that this intel source that I'm quoting from now, the shadow of blah, 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 had said earlier was that they were going after very high profile targets now. They're going after the top of the pyramid, the eye at the top of the pyramid, right? Well, one of the stories that came out, which hardly anybody reported on because it's so disturbing, was on March 19th, where the head of the C airport got into a firefight with federal agents. Okay, let's dig in on this. It's scary, but again, I'll make it funny as much as I can so you don't have to totally freak out. Brian Malinowski, the executive director of the national airport, was, hurt by federal agents and, sent to the hospital. He had a head injury following a firefight at his residence in West Little Rock. Early Tuesday morning around 6 a.m., BATF agents arrived at his home to serve a warrant when they were met with gunfire from within the house. Arkansas State Police have confirmed that M was the individual who fired on the agents and prompted them to return. Oh, look at this, look at this, look at this, woo! The specifics of the warrant and the reasons behind their involvement at Malinowski's residence are still under wraps. Authorities have refrained from commenting further due to an ongoing investigation. Why would you be going after this whistleblower unless you want to have him rat out the top? You see what I'm saying? And then they said, we're going to go after high-value targets and pray because many of our operators are going to be putting themselves in harm's way. And then it was just a couple days after this that this comes out, and they said this. Again, the British royal family has ended, and it says quitting. 146,000 views. We had Ron talking about the Black Swan event, and then, this was on the 20th, on Wednesday. Then we had this very strange thing happen. Smoke coming out from near the Lincoln Memorial. And, we talked about the big pharma shills. And anyway, the Ides of March, the black smoke is when somebody dies. Is somebody trying to tell us something? We don't know yet. So this is really, really interesting what's going on here. And then we had this post where he says, move slowly, never announce your moves before you make them. That sounds like they're getting ready to do something, doesn't it? Like the lion is getting ready to strike. Ties back to this post. Move slowly, carefully, and then strike like the fastest animal on the planet. We won't telegraph our moves. We will, however, light a fire to flush them out. Now, does this mean that there's going to be some type of physical military activity? Probably not. I mean, maybe there is, but I think it's going to be very limited. I think everything is already happening. But there might be kind of a final breakthrough point here, and this is why, again, maybe FAA is warning, hey, there might be air travel disruptions during this eclipse. And there's all this weird buildup about the eclipse. And so this is a very, very interesting thing now. Let me see. I'm almost completely out of time, so I want to make sure we can get to some things. So once again, this is all kind of really scary stuff. I mean, it's like, whoa, what are you guys really saying here? So we had this direct warning of something going on with April 8th, having to do with FEMA and having to do with, disasters. So are they going to try to do something to hurt us? We don't know, but it sure looks like there might be something like that. And again, the skeptics are trying to say, oh, this is nothing. But, there are a lot of weird comms associated with the eclipse. The Alliance then said the world is ready and the stage is set. This was, I think, pretty much where we left off. They had this song called New Alliances. And this, again, the date was March 23rd. Okay, so they're getting ready to do something. New alliances, the stage is set. The very next day, we had this Russian missile enter Polish airspace, which probably they didn't want to happen. It's like World War III fears all the way. Everybody's so afraid. And they did this massive attack on Ukraine. They turned out all the lights, so that could be a prelude to something else happening there. And these were massive amounts of power stations taken down. They're in a much worse position now. So again, I have a slide in here for the disclosure conference. I'm actually doing an event in Loveland, Colorado. That kind of went in there by accident. And then just 2 days after they said, the world is ready, the stage is set, they posted goodbye D. And then, whoa, they post a picture of him with a former president. Holy smokes. This thing broke out 2 days after they said the world is ready, the stage is set. And back again around 2012 or so, I'd written this article on JB and the weird tattoos that he had. Okay, this is the original article, 2014. It's called Decloaking Lucifer, a holographic angry child throwing a tantrum. We're almost done here, folks. I'm going to keep it to 3 hours, I promise. So this was the first 2 tattoos that he had on his little arms, you know, with no hair, like no arm hair, probably because he shaved them. But anyway, look at this. He's got an owl holding onto a key with nothing else there except for the chi symbol. That's the Greek character chi, which is usually associated with Christ. It's almost as if he was trying to decide between chi, Christ, and the owl, whatever the owl means. Well, we know what the owl means. It's associated with the Bohemian Club. Okay, so there it is, right there on his arm, next to the symbol for Christ, first tattoo he got. Why would this be the first tattoo that he got? Did he go to this organization? Did something happen there? Well, then it gets weirder as he goes on, because then he has this tattoo that says believe, and we have what looks like a king, like a royalty, or maybe a Knight Templar, or Knight, one of the Druids, or something like that, Knight of Malta, Knight Templar, something like that. But look at what he's doing. He's plunging his sword into the earth, crucified on a cross. That is the earth on a cross with blood coming off of it, and he is crucifying the earth, and it says believe. And that's right on the other side of his arm, where if you flip it over, there's the owl. Okay, maybe they want him to cover that up. Maybe he was too on the nose. So now he gets all this stuff. But this guy is plunging his sword into the earth, and the earth is bleeding, and it's right there on his arm. I mean, like, what in the world is this? And then after he got that done, then he got another one, which was actually the Eye of Madonna. And just to prove to you that it is, here's the picture he probably got it from, and here's the eye. And it looks pretty darn similar. Somebody says, you could go all night, we love it. Well, we're going to stop at 3 hours just because people get scared of that. But anyway, do you think that looks like the same set of eyes? I sure do. I mean, just do some basic pattern matching. Like, yeah, I think that is. So isn't it interesting? There he is with the Madonna's all-seeing eye on his arm, next to the image of the Bohemian owl, next to the image of the Knight Templar plunging his sword into a bleeding earth. And it says believe right below the eye, as in believe. This is real, man. There you go. I mean, like, what's going on here? Now he's got owl, he's got the eagle, he's got the tiger. These are very strange, interesting things, okay? And I'm just curious, and there's like a fallen angel down there too. Like, what's that about on the bottom? And then he gets yet another one. He gets another one on his chest, which is the broken cross, a Christian crucifix that was all busted up. And so, like, I'm thinking to myself, what is all this stuff? Where is all this going? The PD, this famous rapper and producer, they told us to expect that the final things they're going to do, the Alliance told us to expect that the final things they're going to do are about to happen. Okay, they're about to happen. And then all of a sudden this guy gets arrested and they show a picture of him with one of the top 3 names. On the same night after PD was arrested, what happened on that same night? Do you remember? Oh, that's right. It can't be anything more than just a random coincidence that this boat has its lights go on and off 3 times. It gets steered in just the right way, that it hits the central column in just the right way, and the whole bridge comes down just the right way. Oh, that's just totally random. No. That's not what this source is telling us to believe. On that same day of March 26th, they posted 2 black swans, first of all, and it says V has come to, which again ties in with all the stuff I've been telling you about the movie V, the original television series, that there's reptilians controlling the planet, feeding on us for water and food. Okay, without going too graphic. V has come too. That's that show. And then on the same day, they posted turning Baltimore into a smart city. Baltimore has been reviewing to start the... so here it is. This is it up close. Baltimore has been reviewing its smart city progress to date, July 13th, 2018. By posting this, they are making an implication that some type of smart technology was used to steer this particular vessel to make this particular collision. And I do believe it was intentional because it happened on the same day this guy got arrested. That's exactly what they want. They want a big distraction. He was on his jet trying to escape when they arrived, so he knows he's in trouble. And he got stopped at Opelika. So there's a picture from TMZ of the whole thing going down. And again, the implication is, yeah, this is a black swan event. And General Flynn said that, so did Laura Logan. It's very, very suspect, folks, because there's a lot of stuff that moves through here, a lot of stuff for the military, a lot of stuff for automobiles. Yeah, a lot of stuff for hazardous materials too. Yeah, it can be rerouted. But, you know, this is strange. And then, in addition to all this stuff going on, there's also this speculation about where is Kate Middleton. This video comes out where supposedly it's her, and supposedly she says she's been diagnosed with cancer. But then I would have believed it, except that they said, you know, is it a deep fake? And isn't that odd? Cameron Mancini, thank you. Just saw a super chat go by. There's probably been many of them. I apologize. I'm just trying to stay on my content here. I want to get this done in 3 hours. So this is what he posted. This video dating back 7 years features her wearing the same sweater, or almost the same. It's just that there's more. In the new video, the stripes go all the way to the edge, whereas in this one, there's some white between where the stripes stop and where the collar begins. She has the same, almost the same sweater with her hairstyle bearing a striking resemblance. That's because it probably was the same hairstyle where she discloses her battle. So this implies what they're trying to tell you is she might be in some trial somewhere. She's not actually filming this. This was done with some other technology. Speculation is arising that a deepfake or AI may have been crafted. What do you think? Now, they're not telling you it's true, but they want you to think about it, which means they want you to think about the idea that this is not real, and therefore she might be somewhere else, and there might be something else going on. So then they said, rate this community note is not helpful. All I did is speculate what other people are discussing, compared it to a year ago. Why am I not allowed to ask questions? Who said the BBC is credible for anything? The royal family has a history of altering images, and we should have a right to question them. Beloved Vine Hawk should be suspended as a contributor, as he only targets people with conservative views. And then this is what the guy said. The video is not fake. It was filmed on Wednesday, March 20th. An analysis with a tool used to detect deep fakes detected no AI. Well, again, maybe it can't be proven, but they want you to ask the question, and to me, that's very interesting. Then, getting up to the present now, they put out the 3-word communication, Eagle, Evergreen, and Renegade. That's only those 3 words, and it appears to represent Biden, Hillary, and Obama. Some type of maybe final plans that they're going to have to get these things done. And so there it is on 27 March, and then 28th March. We'll get to that one in just a second. So Eagle, well, that's obviously associated with the president. Renegade, if you remember, was Obama's code name in the Secret Service. But what's Evergreen all about? Well, I knew, and I'd written it in my journal, and then later on that same day, they posted about it. On March 24th, 2021, a giant container ship ran aground in the Suez Canal, blocking one of the world's busiest trade routes in both directions for nearly 19 hours. The 2,000-ton Ever Given was en route from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean when it became stuck sideways in the canal. The ship was operated by Evergreen Marine. So even though the ship is called Ever Given, if you look at the picture, you can see that the name of the company was Evergreen, and the side of the ship says Evergreen. So again, what happened is the ship was going along. It got blocked for nearly 19 hours. And based on all of my speculation, actually, now we have it up close so you can see it even closer. When they blocked it, this was probably an alliance operation, and they probably had people inside some of these containers on the ship. There was probably some type of smuggling going on here. that was very scary and very dark. And for those 19 hours, they were able to free everyone. And they probably have, I'm going to just speculate on all the evidence here, a trail of evidence linking this back to this said individual. I want to remind everyone about the evergreen issue that happened in the Suez Canal. Because of community notes, I was not allowed to mention HC and this human stuff that's going on. Make sure you remind everyone. Whoa, he's just giving it to you. They've got some damning evidence from this. They've been holding on to it all this time. They rescued people out of these containers. That's probably what they're saying. Then we had DC Drano, who said, February 2024, White House puts out executive order to boost cybersecurity at U.S. shipping ports. March 24, giant ship loses power twice, aims itself directly at the bridge, destroys it, and closes down the 10th busiest U.S. port for 10 months, or for many months. We don't know how long yet. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. That was on March 27th. The next thing they posted, I think we're getting pretty close to the present. This might be the last one. An image of stepping out into the light. And it looks like, 45, 47 here. And so I just contrast enhanced it to try to see if the shadow has anything in there. It's an interesting shadow. I mean, it looks kind of ET-ish. I don't know. Maybe we're going to learn about the Draco. Maybe there's some of these things. They did say V has come to. I'm just trying to make sense out of what this is. I really don't know. Okay, your guess is as good as mine. Anyway, now we go to this. The Baltimore thing just conveniently stops our best rapid wartime response cargo ships from being able to get out. And then we find out on the same day, March 29th, we're just going to fire up CERN during the eclipse, create an interdimensional portal, try to bring something through. No big deal. We're just searching for invisible matter. It might be demonic invisible matter. Then they said this, oh my God. Names have leaked that trace back to the Martha's you-know-what. Visitors to the island has been leaked by a data broker. This data includes names. We can do it here. Names, addresses, and in some cases even passport numbers. 200 mobile devices of people who visited the island in the years prior to his so-called death left an invisible trail of data pointing back, oh man, geolocation to their own home. God darn it. People are pissed off. 166 locations throughout the U.S. shows where the visitors likely lived and worked. Ukraine, Cayman Islands, Australia, Florida, Massachusetts, Texagan. Hey, I'm from Texagan, man. It's because it's been 3 hours. I'm almost done. Hold on. And New York. The coordinates in Massachusetts came directly from gated communities in Martha's favorite place. And who lives in Martha's favorite place? And then right below that, they have a video. And then here's another weird silhouette next to this guy. And what's the silhouette about? Is that talking about some type of non-terrestrial intelligence? I'm just speculating. I have no idea. But there's a trail of that, okay? So the answer to this thread is that blankety blank and blank visited the island, but because of the notes, I'm unable to directly say so, spread this post, and mention da-da-da. Now again, until I see anything or until I have the evidence, it's just hearsay. That's all it is. And, there's some kind of war going on between these parties. I'm not really involved in it. I'm just a reporter. Whew, but I got to have some bravery just to talk about this stuff at all. But again, it appears that the final 3 operations are getting ready to happen. It appears something's already happened in Britain. And we're getting ready for some type of big announcement, which directly is tied in with this global ascension at the end of 25,920 years. This so-called wobble in the Earth's axis was predicted in all these ancient cultures by these 2 historians, again, Santillon and Van de Schend, in Hamlet's Mill. And this was Graham Hancock who wrote about this. For some inexplicable reason, at an unknown date, archaic myths from all over the world were co-opted to convey information on technical details of the precession. So this is a typical grain mill. And you throw the wheat inside, and then you roll the stone around, and it grinds it up into flour. But this also represents the earth on its axis, and as the man spins the wheel and grinds the grain, this is the symbol of the earth and the earth on its axis. Now, what's weird about this myth is that the mill keeps breaking at the end of the story, and then there's, in many cases, images of like a solar flash. But this, again, is how these intelligent extraterrestrial humans encoded the precession. One of many ways they did, okay, is through the grain mill. The original Hamlet in Icelandic legend was called Amlodi. Amlod is Hamlet. Hamlet. In Icelandic legend, he is an elusive carrier of fate who must yield. When his mission is accomplished, he sinks into the concealment of the depths of time, the Lord of the Golden Age, the one and future king. After this weird event happens, that's when they're expecting us to transform. This essay, this is from their book now, follows the hero further and farther away, from Northlands to Rome, Finland, Iran, and India. He appears unmistakably in Polynesian legends, and it stands for an astronomical process as the sun shifts through the signs of the zodiac, determining 2,160-year ages of the zodiac. Wow! Each age ends with a world era, a twilight of the gods. Great structures collapse, pillars topple that supported the great fabric, floods and cataclysms herald the shaping of a new world. As we follow the clues, stars, numbers, colors, plants, forms, verse, and structures, a huge framework of connection is revealed at many levels. This is a true edifice, something like a mathematical matrix, a world image that fits the many levels, and all of it is kept in order by strict measure. Let's just take a breath. Wow, that's so heavy. Not only do all of these myths tell the story of the hero's journey, they're also, as these two historians found out, encoding the metaphor of the 25,000-year cycle, which, as we showed you, has 5 units of Mayan calendar in it. And at the end of the Mayan calendar, what does the sun do? Whoa. Well, we're at the end of the Mayan calendar now, and Michael has told us that we are going to go through a non-catastrophic ascension, as I've said. This is his vision, Archangel Michael, as I've been talking about in previous shows. All of these different geometries have a node that converges at the end, and all of the different hero's journey storylines merge into a global hero's journey against a global villain. The stories will naturally and miraculously resolve, creating the tearjerker cinematic ending like I had talking about The Matrix. It creates a spontaneous change, so Michael says, in the physics of our reality. And in this photonic geometric model, we can see that matter itself is made of geometry that can phase shift. So the atoms and molecules that make up your body literally have a harmonic change. The very molecular material that you're made out of, in law of one terms, will become higher density. Your body is going to become different. It might not weigh as much. It might be lighter in physical strength, but heavier in light strength. In fact, people apparently are going to have light bodies. So he said that this is going to be a sudden, highly ecstatic upgrade. We expand into this realm of perfect bliss, where your body feels very, very stretchy. You can start to remember past lives. All of those different places and different cycles all start merging into your cosmic now, and you become aware of your different lifetimes at the same time. And now you can eventually be able to time travel into your own life and give yourself advice about what to do. You can time travel back into your own life and give yourself dreams, synchronicities, hidden messages, people who show up at the right time and tell you something, things like this video. Some part of you from the future wants you to know what I'm telling you right now, to not be afraid, to not be scared, because all of this stuff is heading into our galactic family reunion. And we already got 8 minutes in past the hour. My God. Let me read some of your comments so I don't feel totally rude. Keep on going another hour, says Nicole Goddess. War Angel says, repentance is our friend. Earthwatch just put a video up saying CERN is running tests. Just be a good person, be in your heart chakra for this ascension, and you will be fine. I agree. Levitation, telepathy, chakras balanced, third eye open. Ellie always wins. You should warn your audience, be fair, laughing my ass off. I'm not sure who Ellie is. ELE, the extinction level event, maybe. David, what do you think about the red heifer sacrifice looming over the Gaza conflict? I do believe the alliance is on this as well, and I hope that all these warlike actions can be stopped, because the whole thing is really, really scary and freaky, and I just want peace. That's all I'm interested in. Okay, so in fact, the whole point is, let's do the global peace meditation so that we can try to get this stuff buttoned up. But first, let me read a couple more comments. Sounds like a rapture. Yeah, that's really what it is. Look into Sophia Stewart. She was the creator of the Matrix and Terminator films. These two movie franchises go together. That makes sense. These scripts were stolen from her. I've never heard of that before. Happy to look into that. I'd like to thank you for sharing your info with all of us. Thank you for answering. V has come to is a line from Metal Gear Solid 5. I did not know that. Thank you. But I think it also has all these other layers that they want you to know about. I love your contributions to humanity, says high vibes for wellness. Jamison Woodcraft says thank you for all you do. Linda Goitil says this is the most exciting time to be alive. This has never been done. We are going through this prepared. I mean, yeah, this is so freaking amazing, folks. We're talking about a multi-dimensional evolution in what it means to be human. That we are going to suddenly have the ability to remember who we were before, to hear other people's thoughts. If you're more advanced, you're going to have levitation, telekinesis. As I said, this prophecy exists in the Quran, the Muslim Holy Bible. We've read that before. It's in the Book of Enoch. I read that at the end of the last show. It's in the Bible. It's in Hinduism. It's in Zoroastrianism. And these historians showed that it's in all the ancient myths. They all have the 25,000-year cycle, and we know the 25,000-year cycle, every Mayan calendar, every 5,125 years, Lonnie Thompson found this glacial cycle. There's some kind of huge solar energy outburst. Whoa, it's crazy. My ears are ringing, says Kurt Heckinger. That's a sign of ET contact. The hero's journey is also the card on the tarot. Yeah, that's right. The Fool card is the beginning of the hero's journey. He's got the pack on his back, and he's just naive, and he doesn't really know anything. David of Shield says, peace, love, harmony, and freedom. Margie Barrow says, thank you, David. You are really amazing. You help us so much. Kether Whale says, I believe this will happen. War Angel says, as a child, I dreamed over and over that I was levitating. Look at those PJs from far away. It didn't look like a football player. It looked like a cartoon guy on a rocket. Huh. I hadn't even thought about that. He kind of does. I mean, there is actually a sort of unfortunate and disturbing phallic aspect to this, I guess. Whether that means anything, whether that means anything or not, I don't know. Okay, but there it is. Yeah, it probably is. You know, all this stuff, it turns out the deep state's involved in everything, so whatever. I'm not worried about it anymore. I mean, this is going to fix everything. And they said they're not going to be Earth changes. The solar flash happened in Proxima Centauri. We don't have anything going on right now. I mean, think about what's happening here. Think about the fact that the Earth's inner core already shifted on its axis. It completed in 2013. We had a solar flash on Proxima Centauri, and now this ET source has played by the rules. They've told us, we're coming back as soon as you guys do these important arrests that need to get done. And I don't know if it's right away. There's probably going to be a period of time where we're learning the truth. I don't know how long there is in between. But it can't be much more than a year because the deadline is Memorial Day 2025, galactic family reunion and or solar flash, but a non-catastrophic one. This is so strange. I mean, I'm really very, very excited. And if the Alliance is getting ready to do something, and they got Eagle, right? Eagle, Evergreen, and Renegade are the last three operations that they're going to do. This stuff could be right around the corner. So again, make sure you got all your supplies on hand. You got enough water. You got enough simple food, rice and beans. I think of frozen bison steaks as equivalent to currency. So I have like over 100 steaks in my freezer. So I could go a long time if something went down. I'm just going to put that out there and kind of tell you what's going on. So I think we got to end it here. I don't want to go past 3 hours and 15 minutes. So let's do a little global peace meditation right now. Thank you, everybody, for writing your comments. And here they are again. It's just constantly flowing through the entire show. It's really amazing. And we still have 5,635 concurrent viewers. Amazing. Thank you, guys. This is enough to do the meditation effect. Just about. Good enough. Here we go. All right. Start on 5. We'll go to 3 to start. Okay, here we go. Global peace meditation. So take some nice deep breaths now. And please just hang in there with me. It's only going to be about 2 minutes, very short. As you breathe in and out, imagine this living, luminous energy going out in the universe and creating cosmic geometric patterns, holding stars in place, planets in place, erupting through planets as the great red spot, the great dark spot, sunspots, cloud bands, all of these intriguing things connected to the geometry, the pentagonal structure of the Mayan calendar and its end date. What is really going on there? Solar flash at the end of every cycle? Well, yeah, it was proven. Wow. So we're going deeper into breathing, feeling ever more relaxed. Realizing that it's a perfect plan. The dark night of the soul is not the end of the hero's journey. It's only the beginning of the story of Easter, the story of the resurrection, story of being reborn in a body they could not recognize. They had to look at his hands to notice that it was really the same guy. That was the level of proof that was required. As you keep breathing more and more deeply, imagining peace throughout the planet, all these areas of conflict lessening, those who would create conflict being dealt with in the most peaceful way possible through legal and ethical means. Stepping down or whatever it is that's happening, we're seeing lots of interesting comms going on. We take this energy that we've raised and we send it into the earth. We pray for the smooth and successful completion of whatever is going on. We pray that there be a minimum of disastrous events around the time of the eclipse, which is only just over a week away. We ask that we have a beautiful Easter with our families, that everybody gets along, and that we learn more and more how to reach the hero's quest in our own lives to become more loving, more self-accepting, more patient, more forgiving, and more understanding. And so it is. Now I'd like you to breathe back into the room. I'm David Wilcock. Oh, I went over 15 minutes. I lost another boundary on us here, but thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm really glad that we did this show. And let's go to the present of our comments here, if I can even get to it. Thank you, David. I've rebooted 3 times since you started. Thank you for all your time and effort and energy. That's Kaleidoscope Eyes. Love for all. Yes, David. Geez, we missed you. Let us know the results in the next video. Save the children. Thank you for sharing this most important information. That was Tahana Music within Butterfly Garden. Says, thank you, David. Have a happy Easter. And thank you again, everybody who did Super Chat donations. That's really awesome. I appreciate that. Please also, again, go to thedisclosure.com just thedisclosure.com to buy my course. Go to thedisclosuresummit.com/David to sign up for my live event. We're also going to be doing video live streaming. I hope it's good quality. I think it will be. So you can watch my show without having to go to the event. That's another way you can support us. So again, here I am on my big set. I got my sizzle jacket for you guys. I got a pink shirt. I got orange. I mean, it's just all these beautiful Easter colors. I dressed up for you, and I deserve a little respect. So I thank you for sending us so many kind words and for being so cool. And we will see you on the next show. Thanks for watching.